I talked to somebody, two kids in Gaza recently, 16, 14 years old, and seeing the mental strength they had. Going through, no school, been at war for 2 years, constantly evacuating their homes, and they're still this mentally strong and not losing their minds. It's like, I think that more people should not give into, and they say this term, validate their feelings so much.
Hopefully this isn't glazing too much. I think you have some serious prophet energy. Like, you really do.
I've talked to someone recently who went to therapy, and their problems were just so minuscule. You were really gonna kill yourself and your parents are still around? Like, what's wrong with you?
Would you say that when people judged you in this way that it hurt? How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's been what has it been, like 2 years since I spoke to you?
Has it been 2 years?
It's been a while, yeah. I think it's been something like that, at least a year and a half, a year and some change.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can. There we go.
Chaz, everything good? Everything sound good? Yeah, not my apologies, but unfortunately you can't be on Twitch because of me, but that happens.
Yeah, I think it's all good. Like I said, I'm more interested in the conversation and just catching up than the views, bro.
I love to hear that, man. I'm sick of the views too. I'm getting sick of the social media world. I'm gonna be here for a while, but it's just getting sick of it. What about you? What's new with you, Dr. K?
Not much, man. I was on vacation for a little bit. Just got back.
Lucky guy, man. Where'd you go?
I went to Switzerland and France.
Okay, all right.
Super cool.
Do you speak French? Je parle français un peu.
No, I do not speak French.
Rien français.
You speak French?
Oui, je parle français parce que mon père vient d'Haïti. I speak French because my dad's from Haiti, so.
Oh, interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize you were half Haitian.
Yeah. What did you think I was?
I don't know.
Did you have a guess?
Mm-mm. I mean, you're American?
Yeah, I was born in New York City. I'm an American, no matter what. Some of the far right people are saying I should be deported and stuff, but I am an American.
So I noticed we're both smiling a lot.
I know. It's just I'm happy to talk to you again. It's been a long time.
I know. I'm happy to talk to you too. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, I don't know who that is. I wonder if I should answer. I think I'm not going to answer. I got a phone call, but
was that Mossad?
Yes. How you been?
I'm good. I'm fantastic. I have been craving a vacation. It seems like was that refreshing? Was it good? I still haven't taken a vacation.
Yeah. When was the last time you took a vacation?
Well, so it's hard to tell. I mean, I've taken a lot of trips in the past several years, but strictly like I'm just gonna relax. Vacation, I can't remember.
Yeah. So how long have you been making content?
2000. I mean, technically 2011, but I would say I started my personal YouTube channel 2013. So.
Okay, so you've been making content for a long time, and have you not had a vacation in that amount of time?
No, I mean, no. Since then, yeah. But I mean, like since I started streaming 3 years ago. I was making videos before that.
Okay. And just so we're crystal clear, like, so I know that you're not a huge believer in psychiatry. I'm a psychiatrist. This is not therapy, right? We're on the same page there?
I'm on the same page about it. I still don't believe in therapy, and I know that this is not licensed clinical practice. This is a stream where I'm speaking with a therapist. So legally, you're all good. I'm not going to sue you if I do hang
Thank
myself.
you so much, man. Weight off my chest.
I'm not going to sue
you. So what do you want to, we're just catching up, right?
Sounds good. I mean, you told me some things. Should I bring that up? You said something to me in this way. So you said you're going through a midlife crisis, and I told you so am I. I'm 26. I'm getting up there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I said I sort of went through one. I think I'm on the other side. But yeah, I think I mentioned a little bit before. But yeah. So do you want to tell me? Can you just catch me up a little bit? We can absolutely talk about that. I'd love to talk about it. Can you catch me up a little bit though? So we spoke a couple years ago. Has it been 2 years?
I think it was either early 24 or late 23.
Okay. And so can you just catch me up what you've been up to since then?
It's been there's a lot. There's a lot to say. I fought a UFC champion, and I got
like
who?
In the ring?
Yep. Yeah, that was a big one. And then I think, it's funny. Last time I spoke to you, I think I spoke about the importance of fighting, and I did speak about stuff like that. So that happened. I think it was a couple months later. And yeah, well, it was funny because I mean, it was fine. It was good. And after the fight, he was a UFC champion, very, a lot heavier than me, obviously more experienced than me. And he said he tried to knock me out, couldn't knock me out, and then people intervened, and then the fight was over. So I think, and then I got respect for that, for not, for staying in there and not wimping out. But then the guy was a little bit cuckoo, so he was he's still talking shit. This besides the point. I think most people understand my perspective, and but
what your perspective was that,
Well, so people keep saying like, okay, you asked to spar him, like, oh, these influencers, they talk so much shit. I never talked shit about the guy. I went up to him. I said, hey, nice to meet you. Congratulations on being the champ. And then he asked me he said, let's spar. And then, okay, sure. And the next day we sparred. He tried to knock me out. He said he couldn't. Shook hands, left, and then continued to talk crap online, which is ironic because that's the whole reason he wanted to fight an influencer, because they talk shit online. So kind of flipped the script. Then afterwards, I would say the secondary major thing was started streaming on PARTI, and then I worked with Kanye West for 5 weeks in Spain. I was living with him in Spain for over a month and working closely with him, and that was a dream come true. And working with my favorite artists of all time and having like a close relationship, that was a big experience. And then now I'm here.
And where's here, if that's not doxing you?
Back in New York City. I moved back to New York at the end of last year. It's been almost a year back in New York. This is where I was born. And I moved to Miami for 2 years after. The last time I spoke to you, I was in Miami. I moved to Miami like at the end of 2022 when I thought when I was getting more famous and my safety was at risk and needed to get a gun, wanted to pay less taxes, get away from COVID New York, or post-COVID New York. And then I came back here. And I still go back to Miami, still got my place there, but back in New York, making my vlogs again, doing what I originally started doing, these videos, yeah.
What do you vlog about?
Everything.
Is it okay if I ask you these questions?
Yeah, sure.
Like you can ask me questions.
I want to figure out about your midlife crisis once I get you up to speed with my life.
Yeah. We can absolutely talk about my midlife crisis. What do you vlog about?
My vlogs are, I think, centered mainly around New York City, interacting with people, things that I'm thinking about, current events, politics, funny things, talking to strangers, doing interviews. Sometimes they're motivational, sometimes they're focused on God, sometimes they're debate oriented, and a lot of it's really personal. So, and I would say heavily edited. Sometimes there's drawing. It's just, it's an expression of everything that I think and like.
Cool. That sounds great. And so I think last time we talked, you had mentioned that, I don't know if you have always been, you're talking, when you talk about God, you're Muslim?
Yes.
And I don't know if you had been to Hajj for the first time or recently,
are you
or
Muslim?
like that?
Are you?
No. I'm basically Hindu. Okay.
And yeah, I haven't been
essentially enemies.
No, it's fine. They might make some jokes, but
yeah, it's fine.
My editor is Hindu. Anyway, I've been to Mecca three, 4 times, but not Hajj yet.
Okay, wow.
Just Umrah.
Okay. And how long have you been Muslim?
2.5 years.
Okay. Oh, so you've been to Mecca 3 times in 2.5 years?
Yeah, I think 3 or 4 times.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah, I remember you saying that it was like a really meaningful experience for you.
Yeah, have you been to the Taj Mahal?
I have.
Is that like the Mecca for Hindus, for Hinduism?
No, man. So the Taj Mahal was built by Muslims.
I knew that.
So it was.
I knew that. Oh my God! As soon as he said yes, the architecture is built.
Okay.
Yeah. Fuck.
It's all good. So it was built by India has a history of getting colonized by various people. So there were basically around 1200 CE, people from the northwest started attacking India.
Yeah.
And then the Mughals, I think around 1500 to 1600. I'm a bit rusty on the, I think closer to 1600. they kind of invaded. And I don't remember, I think it was Aurangzeb's dad, I forget his name, who built the Taj Mahal.
So where's the
then,
where, is there a pilgrimage for Hindus?
There are tons of pilgrimages, but we don't have Hinduism in that way is a pretty like decentralized religion. There's a lot of different paths. There isn't like one site of pilgrimage.
Oh, I know. Vancouver. Toronto.
Maybe there's a bunch of Indian people in Canada.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty like there's some growing anti-Indian sentiment in Canada.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to? What are your major life events since the last time we spoke?
Yeah, so it's funny. Yeah, you know, we were talking about midlife crisis for a second. So I think I sort of probably hit it around that time, and maybe my conversation with you triggered my no. So yeah, so I think, you know, if we spoke at the end of, let's say, 2023, early 2024, you know, so my thing was like I was working in Boston. Was sort of like had an academic career. So that means I was faculty and was teaching a lot. And then, you know, had a job, had a private practice. And then I started kind of Healthy Gamer on the side, and it was never supposed to be a thing. And so started streaming on Twitch, and then it grew a lot during the pandemic. And then, so I think for a couple of years, my life was sort of like responding to the immediacy of my circumstances. So once we started growing a lot, it's like, okay, we hired our first employee in April of 2020. And so then, like, you know, so we needed one person, then we needed another person, and then we needed another person. And so we kind of grew, and we started developing, like, I was kind of noticing that streaming and educating people on the internet only goes so far. So I developed a coaching program that I thought would like help people
Come to party.
with the problems that I was seeing, and addressed a lot of the shortcomings that I think exist in therapy. So built that. One second. Yeah?
What
Hi.
the fuck?
I'm working. Yeah. Bye, sir.
Hey,
Can you close the door? Thank you. They're usually pretty good about. I don't usually work at this hour, so they're, you know, I think it's fair game. So. And so then for a couple of years, it was just sort of like responding to maybe around 2023, I found myself like in a position that I never expected to be in, and was also trying to think a little bit about like what I wanted. So suddenly like was, you know, had the burden of running a company. You know, grew a lot in terms of like brand and fame and all that. Started getting recognized very frequently
so basically,
on the street.
if I could summarize, did you stop being academic and you became a content creator?
Yeah. So I left my academic position maybe in 2021. So was teaching as an adjunct for a little while, and then Healthy Gamer just basically picked up quite a bit, so became a full-time job. I still have a small clinical practice because I just don't want to let go of that. Yeah. I really enjoy doing clinical work. But then it was sort of like wrote a book that went well, but then I was like, hold on a second, this was not, I never intended to be here. So then started thinking a little bit about what am I doing? What do I want to accomplish? You know, thought a lot about financial stuff too, and in terms of like walked away from a pretty lucrative career, and then was trying to think about, you know, what do I want to do there?
What now?
So I was just trying to think, huh?
You're thinking what now?
Yeah, so I was kind of thinking like, what do I want the remainder of my life to be? Because I was actually quite unhappy with a lot of just the way that like things grow, right? So they like mutate and expand, and you have all these like opportunities and stuff. And it's not that I'm not grateful. I think it's amazing stuff. But I sort of found myself being pulled in a lot of different directions without having a whole lot of, on the one hand, I have a ton of autonomy, but on the other hand, it's like, okay, there's this opportunity, so then we're doing this, and then this opportunity, and then we're doing this. And so just like thinking through all that stuff, and it's like, hold on a second, what did we really show up here to do? What do I want to do? What's my dharma? That's the Sanskrit word for duty. So what's my dharma? And then I think for a long time, I was also spiritually coasting. So I did a lot of intense spiritual practice between the ages of about 21 to 28. And then when I started medical school, then for a period of about 10 years, basically devoted a lot of energy to understanding medicine and understanding psychology, understanding neuroscience. And in that time, so I haven't been to India in like over 10 years, but I used to go every year.
Do you miss it?
And so sort of. So I mean, I hope to go back soon, but I think I sort of was like, I had sort of done my own spiritual development, but it wasn't the priority over the last 10 years. It was like, okay, I have the opportunity to train at a really great institution. I have lots of great teachers, so I'm going to like learn this as well as I can. And then there was a lot of, exploration and growth and development in terms of entrepreneurship. I've worked a lot with entrepreneurs, founders. That started around 2017. And so worked a lot as like a psychiatrist and a coach to help people who were like co-founders and entrepreneurs and things like that, CEOs, C-suite executives. But then to be in the role myself was a eye-opening and educating experience. And so then it's sort of like, okay, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And so decided on a couple of things, spent a lot of time by myself, which I think really helps me a lot, spent a lot of time re-engaging in spiritual practice, and now I feel pretty good.
So there's no midlife crisis. You're fine.
No, there was a midlife crisis, but a midlife crisis, I think, is a developmentally. I think we don't appreciate how common they are and how they're also developmentally appropriate.
I think a midlife crisis is when you trade in your Toyota for a mid-sports car, and you get divorced, and then you start dating a girl who's like 10 years younger, and you go to a Coldplay concert.
I think that's, and then you end up on the big screen.
You have an affair, and then you get fired. That midlife crisis is cheating on your spouse and getting a new hobby, and hanging out at younger bars.
I think that I think that is certainly an identity crisis of some sort. I think we sort of characterize that as a midlife crisis. I think many people. It's hard for me to say men versus women, but I think most of the midlife crises that I've that I've helped people through happen to, like that I've assisted people with. I think the numbers have been mostly men.
Right.
So, and I think the textbook midlife crisis that you cited was also a dude, right?
Yeah.
And
a midlife
I
crisis for women, that's just menopause.
I don't think so. So I think there's a false equivalency there. So I absolutely believe that menopause is a very serious time to take stock, and maybe women go through something else. Helps a ton of women through menopause, but I think that the psychological load is different. I wouldn't say that they're one-to-one. But I think a lot of men go through midlife crises that don't manifest the way that you described, right? That's sort of the classic one. And that's a midlife crisis. That's the other thing. I think that's a midlife crisis gone wrong. So when you don't navigate a midlife crisis, I think the roots are very similar. So you kind of like wake up one day and you're in this life that you maybe didn't want, didn't intend. You realize that you've made a lot of sacrifices. You realize that there's a lot of stuff that you maybe have, you sacrificed a lot of what you wanted for the sake of other things. And then you kind of wake up and you're like, hold on a second. My life is, time is passing me by. I'm missing out on stuff. And then, half of what you said, you started with divorce there, right? In your example?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
So I think a lot of that can be just a reaction to the divorce, and that can have completely different roots.
Well,
right?
it's not, it's not necessary, but I'm just, I'm kind of joking around about some of the components.
Yeah. No, but I totally get that you're joking about it, but I think there's also a lot of truth to it, right? I mean, that does happen, and it's a trope that people are really familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How
Is
old are
that
you?
sufficiently? I'm 42.
Yeah, so that's around the age. So then what's and how does that make you feel?
How does what make me feel?
Being 42.
Fine.
Oh, so see, where's the crisis? You're good.
Yeah, I'm good now.
Oh.
I navigated it. It's over.
Oh, good job.
That's what happened. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of recentered. You know, like I'll give you like an example, right? So this is going to sound kind of funny, and maybe we'll get a lot of flack for this and things like that. But so, you know, when we started Healthy Gamer, it was really to help people. And so one of the things that kind of shocked me was we never like designed it to be profit driven. So I'm doing this company stuff for like 5 years. It's not designed to be profit driven. We really try to price things to be like really accessible. There are people struggling in like the Philippines and India. So we really try to price things to be very reasonable. And then after 5 years of doing it, I was like, you know, this is arguably a successful company that I'm running, and I'm not fabulously wealthy. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that's because we never designed it to make a bunch of money. And so that was one thing that was just one example of something that I had to navigate, because I had certain expectations of once you start a company and it becomes arguably quite successful, you're supposed to be rich. But then I remembered, oh, yeah, we never started it to make money, which is why we price things, which is why I'm not rich, which is like totally fine.
It sounds like it bothers you a little bit.
Huh?
It sounds like it bothers you a little.
It absolutely it bothered me a lot for a little while, and then I thought about, okay, what do I really want to do? Do I want to make money, or do I want to help people? Like, what's at the top of the priority list?
Why not both?
And what's at the top of the priority list? It's a priority.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So you can do both, and you know, I do okay. I'm totally fine, and I have a responsibility to my children and things like that, so I make sufficient money there. But it's like, what's at the top? So that was sort of the thing, is I was doing both, sort of, right? So I would make one decision that was really thinking about money, and then I would make another decision that was about helping people. And then as you keep on making those kinds of decisions in two different ways, it can create a lot of different confusion. There were also other things that, other stupid lessons that I didn't realize, which make perfect sense in retrospect. One is that if you do something for free, the more people you do it for, the more expensive it gets. Which is like such common sense now,
well,
but
you can think about it this way: you can help more people if you make money from it. It doesn't need to be a pyramid. They can coexist. Like, you're able to help more people, right, if you're more if your time is more available and you have more freedom.
Yeah, so that's a line of logical thinking that a lot of people will use. I think the problem with that, it is absolutely true, and it can be used to justify all kinds of stuff. So every time that an investor approaches us, which happens quite often, like every time they're like, well, if we give you this pile of money, imagine how many more people you could help. That's like what's usually out the gate, the first thing that they'll say.
But not you.
Not me what?
You don't think that way.
No, I mean, I think that what you said is true. I think it's just there's more context to it. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think it's absolutely true that if I had more resources, like if I had $20 to $50 million, I have a very clear idea of what I would do. But I don't have that, so I won't do that. And you're absolutely correct that if you have more resources, you can help more people.
Right.
I think that's absolutely true.
So what do you think was the biggest thing that got you out of the crisis?
Let me think. The biggest thing.
You said centralizing.
So I think for biggest thing meaning what did I learn or what did I do or what? So thing is kind of a...
Yeah, well, what did you do?
So I think the biggest thing that I did is got quite hardcore about spiritual practice, and I think that was huge. So if I had to put it on one thing, it was that I started doing very intense spiritual practice for like the first time in 12 years.
So it wasn't therapy. So it was getting closer to God.
I don't know if I would call it getting closer to God, but it certainly wasn't therapy. No.
So am I vindicated in a way from our last conversation?
Vindicated about what?
About how God transcends therapy and psychotherapy?
When you say God transcends psychotherapy, what does that mean?
Well, okay, so if your biggest problem in recent time where your crisis stemmed from, if your crisis was solved by something spiritual and God rather than what you do, which is therapy, does that not? My argument last time we spoke was that God transcends therapy, and people should seek that rather than run to a therapist.
I think that. So, what's your understanding of what therapy is for?
Therapy is to. I mean, there's a lot of reasons people go.
There are a lot of reasons people go. That's not the question that I asked. What is it for?
To help people.
In what way?
Talking about stuff.
Okay, so let me answer your question. Or you've indicated, I guess, I don't know, but I think this is a really wonderful question, and this is why I love talking. So, SNEAKO, I mentioned this last time. I think people grossly underestimate how deep of a thinker you are. And I think, last time you were like trying to cause shit with me and stuff. I don't know if you remember. I sort of love that. And if you want to go back down
I knew that would be good content. Like I put on my wife beater.
I thought it was great.
I leaned into the toxically masculine thing to try to. Yeah, no, it's good.
Absolutely. There was a certain. I felt like I was playing a game of mental tennis, and I was like hitting balls across the net, and you were hitting them back. And I think that's why we were smiling a lot, and why it's fun to talk. So I think that. It's really important to remember that psychotherapy, I mean, it started out a particular way, but the way that it's really evolved is to help with pathology, right? So psychotherapy is, I mean, this is debatable, but I'm going to sort of simplify my answer for a moment. So if we look at medicine, the practice of medicine is to heal, right? So pathology means something that is ill. So the most common form of psychotherapy in today's world is to treat an illness. So I think a spiritual crisis and a medical illness are two different things. So if someone has a diagnosis of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or an addiction, there is absolutely an evidence-based psychotherapeutic approach that can help those people. Now, I think one thing that we understand very well, I would argue that 95% of psychotherapists or more would agree with what I'm about to say, that psychotherapy, there's a spiritual dimension that helps people, and that psychotherapy, depending on the therapist, will lean into that dimension or not lean into that dimension. But I think very few psychotherapists believe that they're a substitute for a spiritual thing. Right, so we sort of understand that a lot, and so doing a lot of addiction psychiatry, I would frequently refer my patients to Alcoholics Anonymous, which is also like a spiritual sort of inspired program to help with alcohol addiction. And I think the two complement each other. I think this sort of idea that like one is better than the other. I mean, maybe we can talk more about that. Maybe one is better than the other. But I think that the key thing about the problem with spiritual practice to solve problems is that it's quite unreliable. Okay. So if 1,000 people start going to, let's say, church, let's just assume Christianity for a moment, or even going to meditation or start going to masjid or mosque or whatever, right? So if 1,000 people are in a particular state in their life and they start engaging in spiritual practice, in 12 weeks, what percentage of them will be better by how much? And that's a question that I've never heard a good answer to.
I don't think you can answer that statistically because spiritual practice relies so much on yourself. There's too many personal factors. How seriously are you taking it? Are you really opening your heart? Are you really...
Right.
You can't measure. Belief is almost impossible to measure.
I'm not sure if that's true, but so that therein I think lies the fundamental weakness of spiritual practice or religious practice, right? So the advantage of medicine is that it is more impervious to individual factors. So if I take 100 people who are addicted to alcohol and I send them to church and I send them to a therapist, the whole point of psychotherapy as an evidence-based practice is that it reliably gets a certain kind of result. That's how it's designed. That's how it gets improved. Right. Now, can psychotherapy go as far as spiritual practice can? My guess is probably not. But I think the whole advantage of evidence-based medicine is that it's reliable. It's reliably effective.
Okay. Well, if we peel back a layer, you said psychotherapy or therapy solves illness, correct?
That's what it tries to do.
Yeah. My issue, my main...
That's what it's for. That's
Right.
what it's for.
My main issue with it is that when everybody thinks they're ill, then everybody requires psychotherapy. And I think nowadays more people think that they're ill than ever because it's so profitable. It's such a profitable industry. I've talked to someone recently who went to therapy, and their problems were just so minuscule, and they're ranting to me on the phone and explaining it. Like, I compare myself to other people on Instagram and TikTok, and it's like, you know, some of it, like, it went into like suicidal ideation. I'm like, it's just like, and then during the conversation, the parents came in the room and started talking to who was there on the phone. It's like, you were really gonna kill yourself, and your parents are still around. Like, what's wrong with you? And to put it further to perspective, I talked to somebody, two kids in Gaza recently, like maybe a week, 2 weeks ago, 16, 14 years old, and seeing the mental strength they had, going through, you know, no school, been at war for 2 years, constantly evacuating their homes, and they're still this mentally strong and not losing their minds. It's like, I think that more people should not give into, and they say this term, validate their feelings so much, you know. And I started like pushing back on this person on the phone. They're like, oh, you're invalidating my feelings. I'm like, why are you validating suicidal ideation? Well, you shouldn't validate these thoughts. You should try to be a little more mentally tough. So if everybody thinks they're depressed, thinks they're anxious, have ADHD, thinks they have some sort of mental deficiency, then they're all capable of looking for the cure. And maybe people aren't even sick to begin with. Maybe there's too many ill people, and maybe it's not because of they caught something. Maybe it's because they believe it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I okay, this is gonna be great. You want to talk about this? Or you want to talk about your crisis?
Talk about anything. I'll talk about anything.
Okay, let's talk about this for a little bit. This is great. I love this. Okay. So the first question that I have is, so when someone thinks they're ill, what do you think is going on? How do you understand that?
Well, it varies. So I'll specify a little bit. I think a lot of people, the people that I'm talking about, believe they're ill because they see memes on TikTok saying, I'm so autistic. I'm so autistic that I'm depressed and stupid, and I just can't do. They like to fall back on mentally ill jokes and depressed jokes because they want to take away their own personal responsibility. Or if they have a mental deficiency that they read about online, they're not responsible for their unhappiness and their failures in life. So rather than try to sort it out themselves, I caught something, I'm sad and depressed, I'm anxious, so it's not my fault anymore. Now I need therapy. It's like the easy answer. I see it almost equivalent to doing heroin, or people who say that they self-medicate. Like, oh, I need medicine. It's such a stressful day. I'm self-medicating. Like, no, you're just like getting high, and you just came up with a word to describe. You came up with a reason to justify it. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons people can believe they're ill, but I think the main reason right now is because it's so popular, and you know, a lot of people have a lack of personality. They're not that interesting. They don't really have anything going on. And everybody has, not everybody, I'm generalizing again, but many people have a main character syndrome now, where they need the self-importance, right? Social media has made us more self-reflective and made us more aware of our own existence than ever before. We're constantly looking in the mirror, looking at ourselves, comparing ourselves more than we ever have to other people. So if you want to become more interesting, you want to be at the top echelon of people, like the ones that we see on the top of the algorithm, you need to create something. You need to be the main character. For a lot of people, they're not interesting at all. Mental health is an easy route.
Okay. So, so it sounds like when you're talking about, so what's your impression of what percentage of people like have a diagnosis? Like, what do you think?
Have a real diagnosis?
Or describe what you said. I don't know. Like what? How common is the phenomenon that you're describing?
Again, it's going to be hard to measure statistically, but I think a lot of people in Gen Z, millennials, even if they're not fully diagnosed or self-diagnosed, they've definitely considered it, or
Sure.
have, you know,
Is considering it a bad thing?
considering it, that's a route to a bad thing. And yeah, I do think considering it. I think considering it as real can be bad. When it's not bad is when you consider it like, am I depressed? And you're like, actually, no, I have a great life. I'm not, I'm not handicapped. I'm not mentally ill. I'm not stupid. I don't have any major disabilities. There's electricity. There's food. I'm alive. I'm not in a war. I'm good. If you consider it, you should consider it. See your circumstances, see where you're at, and then be appreciative again, and go back to being a normal human.
Okay, so this is great. So I'm curious. So let's say someone has every reason to be happy.
Yeah.
Right? And they're not happy.
Get over it.
But doesn't that imply that there's something wrong with them? Because they should be happy, right?
I don't think people should view existence based on that scale. Like, am I happy? Am I not happy? They should just survive and live because they're given a life. It's not about. But
forget about should. I'm taking your premise.
Okay.
Right. Your premise was like, this person has a life. They've got this. They've got this. They've got this.
They're breathing.
And they're not happy. Right. Like, they're not in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if they're unhappy, what do you think is the reason for that?
That is the circumstances that they have. Like, what are they doing? What are they putting into their mind? They can fall back on believing that they have a chemical imbalance, or that they have anxiety or something, or they need therapy, or maybe there's a bigger reason.
Forget about what they believe. What do you think is the reason that someone who has every reason to be happy, if that person was suicidal, how do you understand that?
I think it's too much introspection. I think
too much introspection.
Too much introspection. Something like therapy can make people unhappy because they're always thinking about how they should be happy.
Hold on, this person isn't in therapy, right? Or are they in therapy? Right. I'm trying to start with the example that you laid out.
Okay.
So, like, this person has every reason to be happy, but they're not happy. How do you understand what's wrong with them?
I think they are too introspective if they're thinking that way. And so they should live more in the present and be appreciative of things like water, like sun, like family, like life instead. The solution is more oftentimes action rather than inaction, is being outward, living in the exterior, living in the world rather than in their heads.
What do you think determines someone's capability of being introspective or action-oriented? So there's a variance in the population, right? Some people are action-oriented, some people are introspective. How does one end up in either camp?
It depends. I mean, it could be personality type. It could be, environment. But if you can be introspective and be happy, but if you're saying I'm unhappy and there's no reason why I shouldn't be happy, and you're an introspective person, that's probably the reason why.
But if you're saying that personality and environment determine your level of introspectiveness,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So if my personality and my environment, let's say I'm let's just say you're introspective at 25 out of 100. I'm just assigning you a random ass number, okay?
Sure.
Let's say I'm introspective at 90 out of 100.
Okay.
So, and the reason I'm introspective at 90 out of 100 is because of my personality and my environment. I have a perfectly good life, but I happen to be suicidal. Okay?
Okay.
So, at that point, like, I am introspective, right? Okay. So, what am I supposed to do? Like, it's not my choice. This is the way that my brain works.
Well, I'm saying it's a combination of environment and something that's innate.
Sure.
But it's also something you can change. Sure. Like, thinking is an action. You're choosing, it does burn calories. Thinking is, in a way, an action. Yeah. So act more with your hands externally than acting so internally.
Absolutely, right? But that is a predisposition that you have because you're action oriented. You're not introspective.
I am an introspective person. And I actually changed. I started off like being somebody very innately introspective, and I worked it out, and now as I grow older, I become more, more extroverted, they say, or more.
Can you tell me a little bit about that journey?
Okay, so I guess, yeah, when I was younger, I was less social. I was more introverted. I didn't really communicate the way that I communicate now with other people. I thought about
And
myself
how
and
did
the way
you
I
feel
was.
about? Yeah. So how did you feel about yourself back then?
I had more feelings of inferiority, more insecurity, less. I was less decisive. I was more worried about what other people thought about me. I remember there's a specific example. I used to walk around Manhattan, and you could see your reflection when you walk by buildings, right, in the windows, and I would constantly look at myself and wonder what other people were thinking about me. And I'd walk by them and like, who do they think I am? And instead, I got rid of those thoughts by paying less attention to them and instead doing more. Right? I realized that it doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't. Why am I existing for other people instead of for myself? So it was a decision to change.
So you said you had a realization followed by a decision, right?
Yes.
And what would have happened if you didn't have that realization?
I would have been in a worse spot. I would not have enjoyed my life as much as I do now.
Right. So you acted, but the realization came first. And it sounds like the realization preceded introspection, or did it not precede introspection?
No, the realization it came afterwards. So I understand you're going like, okay, people who don't have that realization, therapy can help lead them to that realization.
That's absolutely a slice of what I'm going to say, but I have a lot to say about what you've said so far. I'm happy to lay out my thoughts about what you've said, but
I would love to.
We can do that for a second. Okay. So I think you're correct about a ton of stuff. I think that you're just missing a couple of things, in my opinion.
Yes.
So the first is that when I think about a clinical depression, I think about someone who has every reason to be happy and isn't. That is what shows me that something is broken in their head.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're depressed because you're 28 years old, you are physically unhealthy, you have no social life, you watch pornography and play video games all day, I don't think there's anything mentally wrong with you from a mental illness standpoint. I don't think that's pathological. I think that's congruent with your life. Fair. If your life is shit, you're going to feel bad. Right. That's normal. Okay. That's not illness. What I think is illness is if you're 46 years old, you make $600,000 or $800,000 a year, you're married, you have 2 kids, you have a wife who's loving, faithful, you are tall, you're handsome, you're successful, and you want to kill yourself every single day.
Do you see there's a major thing you left out of that equation of that life?
Sure.
It's spiritual purpose. It's a greater purpose. Like you're not living you're not in your career to get validation from your boss or to get a raise. Your purpose isn't specifically to have a good home and to be a successful guy with a mowed lawn. Your purpose is greater than that. It's serving God. And I think that person, if they have those circumstances like you just laid out, and you did leave out a greater spiritual purpose, it's because that they can't find, they don't know what it is, and spirituality solves that.
Unreliably, right? So this person goes to church and has a relationship with God, right? So people in church will.
I haven't met that guy.
Have depression.
I don't know this person. I know that example you're bringing up, obviously this is anecdotal evidence, but I've never seen that happen. You know, the people that end up, like if you bring up, you know, perfect example would be like Anthony Bourdain or Robin Williams. Some people say Robin Williams had Alzheimer's, he had some condition, but let's say he didn't. Or Anthony Bourdain, perfect example. You watch the first episode of his TV show, and he goes to, I think, Oscar Wilde's hotel room in Paris, where Oscar Wilde killed himself. I'm not sure if that's the right author or artist, whatever. But he goes there and he's like saying, whoa, all these Parisian artists killed themselves in overdose here. He's kind of like, you know, he likes the allure of the artists who ended up, you know, with that grieving, sad life. Anthony Bourdain ended up killing himself in his early 60s, and he had a daughter, he had a wife, he had a good life, successful career, all this thing, but he never had a connection to God. That was the major thing lacking. And that's why I think he did something so selfish as to off himself while having a daughter and having a wife. And I see some of his fans, they say Anthony Bourdain, oh, what a tormented soul. When I see that guy, I think, what a selfish asshole. What a narcissistic, self-involved piece of shit to do that while he has a daughter, while he has a wife around, without even leaving a note, hanging himself in a hotel room for people to find his body. because he wants to be remembered as a tormented, depressed artist. I think he was obsessed with that idea. And if he had a greater purpose rather than living for himself and for his legacy, he would have never done that.
I mean, I think that's a completely valid opinion, right? So what this, I mean, I'm detecting a couple things. I'll go back to my original answer, but I think that, so when, this is interesting. Give me a second.
Go ahead. Mods unban that guy. How's it going so far, chat? What else should I say? How's this going?
Okay. So let's go back to what, well, I'm going to try to address your, like, kind of earlier, a lot of what you said. So I think that generally speaking, you know, when someone has a shitty life and they come in and they say they're depressed, I think that there's ample evidence that shows that if you have a shitty life, your mood is likely to be crap. Okay? And that oftentimes, this is, I mean, the whole reason that I started streaming on Twitch and the whole reason I started a coaching program is because I had so many patients come into my office where I thought that talking to me about your feelings for an hour is not going to be nearly as effective at improving your life as finding a romantic relationship, getting a job or a career that you can be proud of, actually getting your ass to the gym, like doing things like you talk about wanting to write a science fiction fantasy novel that's dystopian. Let's fucking write it. Right? So the whole reason that I started this is because I think that there's ample evidence, and I think most psychiatrists and psychotherapists understand this, that you know, if we look at the mental health crisis that we're seeing today in the world, a lot of it is an economic crisis. Like, a lot of it is a crisis of loneliness at its root. Mm-hmm. That a lot of the structures that supported people's socialization are like disintegrating around us. So when a human being does not get the right kind of inputs, they can manifest something like a mental illness. Now let's talk about a couple of other things. So you mentioned that people have main character syndrome. I think there's also an overwhelming amount of evidence. No, well, maybe not overwhelming. That's just how strongly I feel about it. There's plenty of evidence that shows that increased technology usage and increased social media usage, being on our phones all the time, increases the narcissistic dimension of our personality.
Right.
The more that you judge a human being, the more narcissistic they become. Mm-hmm. So when you're judged a lot, you're going to become narcissistic. That's just sort of how it works. It doesn't always happen that way, but the default response is to become more narcissistic.
But before you continue, can I interject real quick? Just one observation before I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but I noticed that the tone has shifted. Like, therapy and psychotherapy a couple years ago used to be chemical imbalance, used to be mental health crisis based off of, you know, random, something you could catch. Now the language I'm hearing, before you continue, sounds like it's self-inflicted. You're lonely because you're addicted to porn. You're depressed because you're poor and you're not fulfilling.
How do you get self-inflicted from what I said? Or are you talking about language that I didn't use?
Well, you're saying that the majority of the mental health crisis is due to socioeconomic factors, which sounds like it's, you know, these are circumstances that are more controllable rather than uncontrollable. A few years back, when I was in college and everybody was on SSRIs and everyone was on ADHD pills, they were all thinking that it was something that they just caught. It was a chemical imbalance. Now the language is, okay, maybe you're depressed because you're a lonely loser who's addicted to porn. That's what I just noticed from your response.
I'm super confused, because when we say that there's an economic crisis, that's circumstances, not self-inflicted.
Okay,
that's
true.
Self-inflicted.
My point is that the chemical imbalance language has hindered quite a bit, right? Rather than it just being something you catch, it's like, obviously the socioeconomic crisis, that it's not everybody's fault, but it is something that's controllable rather than uncontrollable. It's a situation that they can get themselves out of rather than something that they caught in their brain.
Why would you? There's also, I think there's a weird, there's all kinds of like associations that you form that I don't, if something is a chemical imbalance, what makes you think that it's not modifiable by you?
But my point is the language 10 years ago, when this was blowing up and everybody was that it was just something wrong, that it wasn't at all circumstantial, but just something that happened to people, like catching COVID. That's the point. That's my point.
So I think there's a couple of reasons for that.
Okay.
The first is I think things have changed. And so the cool thing about medicine, science, and psychotherapy is that we tend to do a pretty good job of evolving with the times and studying what happens. So I think that, like, if we look at the last 10 years, the world is very different. And the reasons that people are suffering mentally, I think, are there's a couple of fundamental big changes which have happened, which means that the etiology, which means the cause of the illness is changing. Right? So the factors that the world that people are growing up in is shaping them in a way that it didn't shape them 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So I think you're right that the language is changing. There's a couple of other things. So there's a great paper that came out, I think, in Molecular Psychiatry that basically made the claim, which I think has a lot of merit. I'm not saying that they're right, that the serotonin deficiency hypothesis of depression is not supported by evidence.
Okay. Did you believe that back then? Were you repeating that?
No.
Oh, okay. You're one of the good ones.
I don't know. I wouldn't call myself a good one. I could be wrong.
No, but
right?
I want more psychotherapists who push that serotonin depletion because of a chemical imbalance. I want them to take more responsibility for that, because I've been pushing back against that for 10 years, and people said that I was, not sympathetic. They said I was demonizing depressed people. They said that that I should believe victims. Yeah. Right? I faced a lot of backlash for that, and it seems like I've been vindicated. That it's not, serotonin depletion is more often due to circumstances that are controllable rather than uncontrollable.
So it sounds like what was it like when people basically attacked you for doubting what people were saying about a serotonin imbalance?
Oh, they said you're like, oh, my friend killed himself and you are insensitive, you piece of shit. They would get really upset. And I'm like, I'm right and you're mad. And that's just one of those factors, one of those situations where I said something before it was deemed socially acceptable. And as soon as it becomes socially acceptable, people don't admit that they were wrong, right? And they move on quickly without, properly addressing their mistakes. And those are very dangerous mistakes. I think people who push that chemical imbalance lie and made all of my peers, everybody in my dorm, I would say at least 80% were taking SSRIs because they thought that they just caught depression. And we move on, we act like that didn't happen, but this was very, very normal. I mean, I went to a whole high school. I went to a boarding school in New Hampshire where all the parents were sending them there because they thought that their kids were just depressed for no reason. And there was a mental health problem that they didn't know how to fix. Without therapy, without medication, without all these practices.
What was that like for you to believe something and get tell you oh, you're such an asshole, basically, right? You're a dick for believing this, and everyone's fucking drinking the Kool-Aid and you're like, I don't want to drink the Kool-Aid. Did anyone ever call you depressed?
Not really, no.
Okay.
No.
And so what's it like to be vindicated, which seems so important to you?
I'm catching that you caught on to the frustration, which I think, I know you caught that. That's a repeated theme since I last spoke to you, is I am vindicated about a lot of things that I was demonized for saying too early for the public to understand. And it's frustrating that, and that's something I'm working on. It has increased some bitterness where I'm like, these fucking, I saw this movie Eddington, right? It's a movie about Ari Aster, and it's about 2020 COVID. And it's about the George Floyd riots at the height of COVID paranoia and everything. And I remember at that time, I did not get the COVID vaccine. I was speaking out against it. I was calling the George Floyd looting and all the riots. I was saying that this is stupid. They said that you are against the Black Lives Matter movement. You're propagating racism, and you should not be able to see your grandmother because you're going to get everybody sick and you're a super spreader. People moved on. Now they watch the movie and laugh. And I sat in that movie theater. I'm watching. It was in New York City. I'm watching everyone laugh at this, and I'm like, you didn't let me go into a restaurant without, I had to show my fake vaccine card everywhere. I traveled with this, right? I was deep. You said that I'm a bad person for not posting a black square on Instagram, but then everyone laughs now and they're acting like they didn't, push that craziness, that propaganda. Everybody, I remember back then, all these people in college that were taking SSRIs because they had a chemical imbalance because that's what they read online. Now that they moved on, they don't say like, oh, actually, you know what? I'm sorry for demonizing you. And ironically, when you push somebody away and you call them crazy, that's one of the quickest routes to make them mentally ill and to give them mental health problems. When you isolate somebody, call them crazy, and say that they're a bad person when they're really trying to be helpful.
Call you crazy?
For years. They still do. But I mean, the more time passes, the more I'm being vindicated. But they say I'm crazy less now.
What's it like to be vindicated?
Annoying.
Tell me about it, right? Yeah. Oh man, that's such a good word. Yeah. Definitely introspective. That's a good word. Annoying because, yeah, I totally get you. What's annoying about it? You want me to answer, or you want to answer?
I want you to answer.
I want you to answer.
I think I kind of did answer already.
No. What's annoying about it?
Well, what I just said, it's annoying that people move on like they didn't push the propaganda that they fell for, right? They don't admit their wrongdoing. And it's annoying because it seems like it's so repeatable. If they don't say like, man, I was so stupid for believing that I couldn't sit next to somebody without a mask on, but then I lowered it and then ate the food while they were eating, who were both breathing all over our plates on the plane, and then put it back on. And like all the dirty stares I got because I wasn't wearing a mask. The fact that they don't self-reflect and the fact that there's any introspection on that aspect, it seems like this is going to happen again, and it will. And more people will fall for these very easily debunked lies.
Okay. So I think would you say that when people judged you in this way that it hurt?
No, I don't think it hurt because I knew I was right. And I think it made me mentally stronger. So no, I wouldn't say I was, no, I don't think so.
Okay. I would be surprised if you used that word too, but I think it did hurt. Right? I think it hurts. Just because you're mentally strong doesn't, I mean, so you mentioned mental strength, and usually you need strength when you're hurt.
When you go to the gym, you break down your muscles and then they repair. So I would probably admit that it hurt if I fell victim to it, but I didn't. I was able to rise out of the ashes like a phoenix.
Right, but then you're in the ashes, like you got burned, bro. You see what I'm saying? Like, no, I think there's an association here. I think that there's the word bothers you a lot, but I think that's what happened. Does that sort of make sense? Like, I'm not saying I'm right.
I understand. Like, okay, well, the analogy is like when you go to the gym and you have a great workout, you don't like, fuck, that hurt. You're like, woo! It's like in a masochistic way, the pain is good because you know that it's going to make you better. You understand? Like, what if you do a really big set on the bench, you're not like, oh my god, fight! It's pain. You're not like, it's painful. It's a good pain. So it's sure. Different. It's different than hurt.
Yeah, I'm with you, right? So I would say that it hurt, right? And then it's just a good hurt. Not all hurt is bad, and not all hurt happens to weak people, and a lot of strength comes from hurt. Like, I think that, if we look at the people in Gaza, there's a lot of hurt there, but I don't think those people are weak. I think those people are strong.
Yeah.
And I think that hurt is a great way to grow. And I think that there's a lot of associations with hurt and weakness, that if you're strong, you don't get hurt. There's this idea that invulnerability and strength are correlated. I don't think they are. I think strength, like, it's sort of like courage or fearlessness. Like, I think I respect courage way more than fearlessness. Fearlessness, I think, is ignorance. Courage is overcoming your fear. But if you ask a courageous person, are you scared? I think it's kind of like that. So I think that it's very clear to me that this was painful to you.
Yeah, as you say this, I understand your point, but I'm realizing my thought process is that I don't like to think with any victim. If I can remove any victim words from my vocabulary and my thought process, I end up better. So rather than say like this was painful, that signals to the world and signals to people that, you know, like that you need shelter or that you need comfort, and I'd rather that all come internally. So I try to limit as much of that language as possible because it helps with the recovery process in a better way. So it's selective thinking, and that's actually a good example of self-accountability and responsibility, right? If I use words like hurt more, then I'm gonna think in a weaker state rather than overcome it immediately. So I recommend people think that way as well. The less strength you give away, and the less weakness you signal to the world, the less that people are going to take advantage of it.
So, I really respect that response. So I think, like I said, and this is the second time I'm going to say this, I think you're a really strong thinker. So I think very few people can do what you just did. So I think most people stick to their guns. They don't modify what they're saying at all. And here's what I think is going to be even more dangerous, and I think we should have this conversation, but I still want to get back to the other thing. Maybe that one is left forever, but
right.
I think that your way of thinking is really good to move you from one place to another place, but I think it's going to keep you stuck. And there is another evolution of your thinking, which is that, so right now what you're doing is you're creating like a mental filter, right? So thinking this way does not help me. That is, whether something is functionally useful is different from whether it is true. So you've engaged in a cognitive reshaping, and I know this is going to sound kind of challenging. I think it's absolutely adaptive, and I think that at some point, if not already, it is going to be maladaptive. I think it's a really, really useful strategy, but at its core, it is dishonest.
But that's also the difference between having... Sorry to interrupt you. Okay, go ahead.
And I think that many people who are not mentally capable require some degree of dishonesty, and you have to work yourself up to being able to handle an honest perspective on your life. And I can offer examples. So I think what you're doing makes a lot of sense, and I think it's going to fuck you down the road.
Okay, but there's a difference between having this conversation publicly and privately. Part of the reason I answered that was because so much of what I do and say is in the public eye for years that, and especially, this is a public conversation right now. I am thinking differently and speaking differently because thousands, maybe millions of people are listening to these words right now. So I know that it's a responsibility and it's powerful. So I don't signal, like if we were having this conversation privately, it'd be completely different. I would have been like, man, that fucking sucked. Yeah. But I have people that are like, I want to inspire people. I want to make the world a better place. And I've seen the impact that I've had culturally. And I've changed, I've noticed myself change the zeitgeist. I've seen language, I've seen the shift that I think people in my space on the internet and me directly that I've had on the culture. So that's the difference between people who think privately and are always in the public eye and always being scrutinized and always being in the free marketplace of ideas.
What do you think would happen if you said, yeah, that sucked in a public way?
That gives more weakness, and it signals to more people that they can be vulnerable. And yes, that's true that it's good to be vulnerable, but oftentimes for men, it's better to not be vulnerable publicly. So if I want to help out people and I want to make the world a better place, I would like to limit the amount of vulnerability that people give away randomly, right? I trust you. I've had conversation with you, and I trust that you're an open person. If I were speaking to you privately, I'd be more vulnerable with that. But I don't. There's so I have enemies. I have people that want to destroy everything I do. So the less amount of vulnerability that I could signal to the world, the better.
That makes me sad to hear, man. Like, you sound like you're, I mean, that sounds like you're carrying a lot. And I don't mean that, I appreciate the nobility of it. Like, I'm not asking for things to be different. I think on balance, it's a good thing, what you're carrying around. I can see how it helps people. And I can see how you're okay carrying it because it does help people, that you take this responsibility incredibly seriously. And it makes me sad to hear that that still costs you, right? So, like, just because carrying it is worth it and is the right thing to do and maybe aligned with your spiritual goals in life or whatever, doesn't change the fact that it still is hard to carry sometimes. And to hear you have to be so paranoid, and pardon me if that word is too strong, or so careful, so thoughtful, to have such a, it sounds exhausting, it sounds trapping, like you can't be free. And because you used to, right? And you, boy, did you get fucking punished for it, bro. You shared your opinions. You didn't drink the Kool-Aid, and people were like, "Fuck you, bro. You're being insensitive. You're not standing up for black people.
And I got
you're
banned
an asshole.
everywhere.
You're
And I lost my livelihood. I lost everything.
You lost everything.
You can't stream. You can't stream this conversation because of that.
I get it, right?
Yeah.
So you've been punished so hard, and that makes me sad.
It is what it is. It is what I mean. But there we go. It's like, okay, it's what is worth being sad about.
Hold on.
Okay.
It is. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It's what it is. What is that? What is that phrase, SNEAKO?
This is the.
What are you doing there?
This is reality.
No, it's not. That's the fucking exact opposite.
Yes. No, actually, this is reality.
No, it's not. It is what it is you doing your cognitive transformation towards strength and not allowing your weakness.
Say it one more time.
When you say the phrase, it is what it is, that's your cognitive transformation. That's your movement from weakness to strength.
But how is that not reality?
Because it's a transformation. It's something that you're intentionally doing to change your perspective. This is where you start, and then when you say it is what it is, it's a really sneaky version of it, right? Because you're saying it is what it is. But if that is what it is, there is so much anger, frustration, disappointment. All these fucking people said all this shit about you, and now that you've been vindicated, does anyone apologize? Does anyone say, welcome back to the platform, bro? No, of course not. There is such a mountain of frustration and pain and whatever, and the only way, let's say, to deal with that, right? Because what are you going to do? You say it is what it is. This is the world that we live in. So I'm going to reframe away from that shit to this. It is what it is. You soldier on.
Well, I mean, that statement still is true. It literally is what it is, regardless.
It's 100. It is true.
So the statement is true. Okay.
Hold on. And it's not that it's false. It's that it's a cognitive shift, right? So when you do that, you're shifting away from something else. Does that kind of make sense?
Well, what I'm shifting, I understand completely. What I'm shifting away from, when you say that makes me sad, I start thinking, fuck, like maybe I should feel sorry and sad for myself. And then I'm like, I remember where I am. I have a nice apartment.
Exactly. And then you do the cognitive shift.
But why would it? What's wrong with shifting to a more
Nothing's
positive?
wrong with shifting right now.
Okay, so what's your point?
My point is, first of all, that we should have awareness. Here's what I think is good. This is what I'm moving towards. We should have awareness of what happens inside of us. That's the North Star. Nothing. We should be blind to nothing.
I'm completely aware of that. Because when you say that makes you sad, I was like, fuck yeah, that sucks. Yeah, and I'm like, damn. I started thinking about the stuff I lost and stuff. And, you know, how my reputation was hit and the attacks I get that I still get to this day and all this blah, blah, blah. Started thinking negatively. And I'm reminded that thinking negatively does not solve anything. And that solutions come through positive and forward thinking, through maintaining real frame. Then I'm reminded about what is happening across the world. Like, feeling sorry for myself while children are starving in Gaza as we speak, that I know, it's selfish thinking to be thinking, so, oh, me, oh, woe is me, and returning to this frame when it's like people have way worse circumstances right now that, you know, if they're able to soldier on, then I should too. And the world keeps spinning. The girls keep being everyone moves. Everyone is still living, and we're all older than we were a second ago. So it is what it is. Let's keep on going. What's next? That's the only solution. There is no solution to be found through that negative introspection.
I disagree.
Okay.
So I think this is a great solution when you're 26. It's a bad solution when you're 42. So I think that I'm with you all the way. I think there's a couple of associations that you're making, which I think are completely logical to make, or completely correct to make. Admitting weakness or admitting hurt, you're attaching to a downward spiral.
Yeah.
And I think when you were probably like a teenager and you had some crush on some girl in high school and she didn't give you the time of day, you were like, fuck that, I ain't ever going to be that guy again. So when you look at yourself, when you see yourself in the reflection of walking down the street in Manhattan, you didn't like what you saw. And then you decided, you vowed to yourself, you're never going to be that. And look at this beautiful suit you're wearing now.
Looking great.
Right? Look at where you are now. How can you ever say that this form of adaptation is a problem? And I'm with you. I think it's the right thing for you to do up until this point. And by all means, do it for another 15 years.
Oh, and then
I
15,
think though, like
and then 15 years, what happens?
In 15 years, you will have such a pile of negativity inside you because you've reframed. You'll be functional. You'll be, I don't know about you will. That's not right. So there is a chance that if you continue employing this strategy, the resentment that you have that is pretty potent, right? Like you've used the word vindication several times. So you're let me think. I'm trying to find a less demeaning word than butthurt, but I can't. So like I feel like I'm walking very dangerous ground because if I say a single thing that demeans you, I think it's going to be hard. But I'm using the word butthurt because I'm leaning into this like, I respect you and I really do, and I care about you, like I do.
Thank you.
And you're so butthurt about this that you're like seeking vindication so much. And the problem is that you can seek vindication over and over and over again, but if the butthurt keeps piling up, that you can not let the butthurt hurt you through adaptive thinking, which is absolutely correct. I think if you're someone who's like super depressed, I think doing what you're doing is really good. I really do. It's cognitively flexible. It's cognitive adaptations. The shit that you're doing in your mind right now is 50% of what we teach in therapy. We teach people to think like you. Okay? And I think that there comes a point where accepting every dimension of your being gets you closer to transcendence. And I think you're going to understand this too, because when you're with God, you don't do any of this. That's the whole value. Mm-hmm. Right? And so all I'm saying is like that which you do when you lay yourself bare and you tell God about how hurt you are, it's not weak, right? You let go of it. You're like kind of like, okay, this has happened, like whatever, right? Like I'm going to put my faith in you. I don't know exactly what you do or whatever. But there's a certain amount of like brutal honesty about your weakness, which I totally get is complicated because you're in a public space. People dislike you. People try to take you down, all this kind of shit, right? So I'm not please understand, I'm not blaming you for anything that you do. I think you're remarkably resilient.
Thank you.
And I think that there's like, I don't know if this kind of makes sense. You know, so oftentimes in my experience, people are like at one end of the pendulum and then they swing to the other end. And that's progress. But I think that there's a step above that, which is to not be on either end of the pendulum and kind of come towards the middle where you can be vulnerable, you can be hurt, you can say that this hurt you, you can say that this bothers you, but there is a methodology to not let that turn into a spiral.
That's fair.
And I think that when you do that, there is a level. So I don't know if this makes sense. Every time you do that, I don't know if this is going to make sense. There's internal friction. I'm not saying you're weak. I'm not saying it's going to hurt you. I'm saying that there's some right? And it comes out with your use of the word vindication. And what I'm talking about is peace. Not right, not successful. And if you continue along this track, you may be peace because you've got spirituality on your side. And I think spirituality helps you find that space between these things. I think it's a really good thing. So I'm not trying to like predict doom and gloom for you. But I think that especially, like, I do think it's better to continue to level up. And because I see a lot of people get stuck with like this way of thinking, which is this sort of like reliance on adaptation, reliance on like, I don't think this is you, but in some people it's like toxic positivity where they can't ever like say that they're hurt or sad or whatever, right? Like it's just, I don't think that label fits you. I think the better thing to fit, you're resilient and you've got, adaptations based on, I'm trying to find a better word than trauma, but like you've had negative experiences that you've adapted to. And one of the things that we know is that negative experiences are healthy adaptations in those circumstances. But if you carry those adaptations into different circumstances, they can become something called maladaptive. Right? So like, I think that a good example of where I see this a lot with men, I'm a loser, I'm going to become a winner. And then the kinds of relationships that you're capable of can be different from what you truly crave. Right? So like, you can never show weakness in front of your partner, your romantic partner, if it's a woman. But really what you crave is like true partnership. You want one person in this world that you don't have to put on a mask with, that will stand by you all the time. Mm-hmm. But if you keep on doing this shit reflexively, you will never show her that weakness and you will never give her an opportunity to accept you in your flawed state. And if you never give her the chance to accept you in your flawed state, there will always be a doubt in your mind. Is she going to leave me if XYZ happens? Mm-hmm. That kind of security is like fucking amazing, right? And I think you have some sense of this because usually we can get some version of this through a spiritual experience or God or whatever, because we can be honest with God, hopefully. Fingers crossed. I don't know.
So what do you think is... So you sound like you're coming from a perspective. You're older. You've been through more than I have, most likely.
I don't know if that's true.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're a father.
I'm older.
You're a father, and you have children. You've had experiences that I have yet to have any idea about personally yet. So you're saying that by age 42, I am going to doing the practice of the shifting. Cope that it doesn't work the same anymore because eventually it's going to catch up to you and you might have like a nervous breakdown or something like that. So you're saying be more even keel. And as you explain this, I am realizing that a lot of that I can't really afford to be more in the middle about this because of what I do.
That's why I'm sad.
But and I understand, but I can't really, like, if I was more nuanced with it, I was more, sitting in that. Not only does it not accomplish anything, but it everything else sacrifices. Then my content sacrifices, and if my content loses, then I lose more, and then it's like it's exponential loss. So. Because then I'm producing less money, then I'm going to be less active, then I'm going to be, not enjoying the content as more. It's just, it's a domino effect to a worse life. So it's just this frame of thinking is the most effective for what I do.
I can totally understand. So it's not my place to tell you, and by not my place, I mean, it would be the height of arrogance for me to tell you, if you do this, your content will be fine, right? You know your content way better than I do. You know what works and what doesn't work. What I would encourage you to do is, this is something I feel pretty confident about. So here at Healthy Gamer, we've worked with over 500 content creators, and ranging from super, super small to like huge. and like way bigger than me or you. And I'm making assumptions about what your content size is, which I'm pretty sure I'm right. But I mean, I don't know what it is, but I think it's in the ballpark of where I am, right? So, and I think that one of the most consistent things is that, you know, people learn a particular strategy of something working, but when you work with them, when you really start to question things, when you start to try things, what a lot of content creators feel, this is really ironic, but a lot of people think that the bigger you are as a content creator, the more power you have, the more freedom you have, but really it's the opposite. So when you're like a no-name nobody, you can make whatever kind of content you want, and it doesn't really matter. As content creators become more and more successful, one of the most common experiences they have is they feel more and more restricted. They can't try different things because there's this domino effect. They have to make the same kind of content. They can't speak out about this. They can't, you know, speak out about that. Like they can't, they're going to get punished for any kind of innovation except for the acceptable innovation, right? So if you have a certain kind of content and you talk to people on the street, you can go to Amsterdam instead of New York. That's like an innovation that your audience will like.
Right.
It's been my experience that with the right amount of thought and energy, for about 40% of people, that's not true. I wish I could say, everybody, if they thought hard enough, they're not nearly as trapped as you are, but I'd say I'd ballpark it at about 40%. And I totally get that this is a huge challenge for you, and that you're shaped by having this public persona. And the reason that I stopped it, I have more experience than you. I think you've lived a lot more at 26. I mean, when I was than I had at your age. So I think, like, I mean, you said you started making content in 2013. Mm-hmm. So I just because I'm older than you, sure, I have some experiences that you don't have, and I have more experiences theoretically. But I also know that for a large part of my life, I had the same fucking experience day after 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 day. I mean, I used to play video games for like 16 to 20 hours a day for like years of my life. So there, I mean, I don't think that, you know, it's the same fucking thing. And maybe the depths of the depression or whatever you want to call it got worse, but like generally speaking, I think you've had quite. I mean, you mentioned that you spent 5 weeks in Spain with Kanye West. Like, that's a big experience, right? You've made a lot of different content. You've talked to a lot of different people. So on balance, I'd say I probably have more experiences in life than you do, but I wouldn't jump to that conclusion as easily as you would.
Yes, I'm also partially being humble so that I don't come off too, braggadocious to, the people watching this. But then, no, that's true. And also why I joke around about going through a midlife crisis, because the life that I've lived so far, I feel much older. And most of my friends are in their mid-late 30s. Most of my close friends are much older than me, because a lot of people my age, they haven't, they haven't seen too much, and they haven't been through as much as I've been through. So it's harder to relate 100%.
So where do you think we should go from here?
In life, or this conversation?
This conversation.
I
can go back to my perspective of mental health. I can talk to you. I can ask you questions about what you've been going through recently.
Whatever you think. Whatever you think.
Okay, let me finish my perspective on mental health, because you said a lot of stuff there, and then I'll ask you about what you're going through recently.
Yes, and then I do want to ask you about fatherhood after those two things.
Sure. So I think SNEAKO, I think your observations are like pretty spot on in a lot of ways. I think some of the conclusions that you draw. So I noticed that you make a lot of associations. So you'll make this observation, and then you'll tie something to it, right? So for example, the expression of weakness means maybe a downward spiral or whatever. And it's not that that's wrong, right? So that's clearly observable in our own lives. If I wallow in my weakness, then it can lead to a downward spiral. We see a lot of people who express weakness. If someone expresses weakness, the likelihood that they wallow in it is pretty high. Yeah. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely.
So I think you make a lot of associations, and what I really respect you for is that when I point out the associations, you're quite flexible around them. So like your capacity to self-reflect and recognize what you're doing internally is like quite exceptional.
Let's go.
So there was a video that a buddy of mine made. I don't know if he made it or whatever, on his channel that has your face and my face and talks about how I owned you.
I saw it.
I don't know if you've seen it.
I've seen that.
And so I was a little bit frustrated when I saw that, but I realized that it is what it is. This is what the world is, and whatever. The thing that that really bothered me, I've never watched the video, but the thing that I think really bothered me about that video is that it talks about me owning you, but I think the real thing there is you should be given a ton of credit. Because in order for me to quote unquote own you, you have to be open-minded. And what I think our conversation was really a testament to me about was your open-mindedness, right? That like, I can't convince you unless you're willing to be convinced, unless you're actually able to look at the critical nature, or you're able to look at your thought process in a critical way. So that was one thing. I never watched the video, but whatever. And so I think this is something that like, I just hope that, because who knows, right? This isn't a public, maybe someone will make this again or whatever. But I think like it's really important for people to understand that, you know, if you start this conversation in one place and you end up in another place, that requires effort on both of our parts, right? I can offer something, but then you have to be willing to receive it. And if you're closed-minded about it, I'm not going to be able, I can't like argue, because I don't, I mean, we're not arguing, we're talking. And so that's something that I just really appreciate about you. Anyway, so I think that's one thing that I think is, you make these tight associations, which I just don't make. So half of what you say, I agree with 100%. The conclusions that you come to, I don't agree with. So a couple of these things, are people having more main character syndrome? Absolutely. Are people becoming more narcissistic? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Is the validation of feelings, and is everyone over-identifying in a negative way with mental illness? There's data to support that. The science actually supports that. There's one study that found that something like 90 to 95% of information about autism or ADHD on TikTok, it's rusty on the study, it's about 18 months old, I think, at this point, is wrong. So everyone is like, if you do this, you've got ADHD. If you do this, you've got autism. Yeah. 90 to 95% of it is incorrect. And these are like huge content creators that basically have the slice of life stuff. And then people is like, oh, I forget my keys. That means I have ADHD. So there's an over-identification with a lot of mental illness stuff. I totally see that. I think it's really, really challenging. I think it's not healthy. Second thing, I think there's a lot of bullshit around the validation of feelings. So I think that there's actually a really cool paper, I can show it later or send you a reference or whatever, about how reassurance seeking is mentally unhealthy. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people who post things about struggles are seeking reassurance. Right. So this is a form of unhealthy coping. Yeah. And coping in general is not healthy. So coping is, I mean, like roughly, let's understand, right? So coping is not problem solving. Coping is accepting a particular negative state and then doing something to be able to tolerate the state. But the problem with coping is that you tend to propagate the negative state. Mm-hmm. The healthy way to cope is, right now I'm overwhelmed, right now I'm feeling bad, let me cope so I feel better. But there's a really important second step. Now that I'm better, now that I'm feeling better, what am I going to do to change my circumstances so that I don't feel that way again? Yeah. I see a very, very disturbing trend, which I do think is somewhat responsible for the increase in mental illness and mental suffering that we see, that people are like sort of defaulting to some of these like maladaptive mechanisms. The other thing that I think is really unhealthy is that people are increasingly, this is really challenging, but we basically have we sort of have a epidemic of something in the ballpark of factitious disorder and malingering. So let me explain. Mm-hmm. So there's a handful of illnesses, okay? So pseudo-seizures, non-epileptiform seizures, factitious disorder, malingering, that are illnesses that people create the sick roll either intentionally or psychologically, they claim being sick. And the reason that they claim being sick is because it benefits them in some way. So in society, if you are ill, we give you certain latitude. If you're ill, you don't have to come to work. If you're ill, you don't have to go to school. If you're ill, you don't have to take out the trash, right? This is something that we as a society do. So what some people learn how to do, either consciously or subconsciously, is claim illness. And this is a diagnosable thing when it happens really bad. So malingering is like when someone comes in, when a homeless person comes into the emergency room and says, I'm really suicidal, I'm going to kill myself, and it's negative 10 degrees outside, and I'm working in downtown Boston, and they have nowhere to stay, that's malingering, right? Maybe. So we have to assess them diagnostically to see if it's malingering or not. So what I'm seeing is happening a lot is that people are using illness as an excuse. And my kind of stance on this as a psychiatrist is kind of hard for a lot of people to hear, but this is, I think, what is acceptable. So, you know, I once had a patient who had bipolar disorder, and they would become manic, and then they would do lots of really inappropriate things. They would gamble. They would start to give their possessions away to homeless people. They would invite homeless people to come to their house, to stay in their house because they wanted to be like, you know, so caring and stuff like that. They're manic. And so this person's partner comes home with their young child. And when they come home with their young child, there's like 3 homeless people like in their home. And the partner is like, what the hell is going on? Yeah. So later on, this person said, you know, it's not my fault, I'm manic. And generally speaking, that's true, right? So we as a society acknowledge that if someone is acutely manic, they're behaving in ways that they really can't control. Like, it's not controllable. There's a lot of evidence of that. So the problem, though, is that just because you can't control your behavior when you are manic doesn't mean that this isn't your fault. There's a subtlety and a nuance here that's really important. How did you get manic in the first place? Did you stop taking your medication? Did you stop going to therapy? Did you start staying up super late? Did you start using substances? So one of the most challenging things as a psychiatrist is navigating this sort of like, okay, you're not responsible for what you do when you're fucking high out of your mind on K2, but are you responsible for using K2 in the first place?
Absolutely.
Right? So I think what's happening right now is since we give so many people a pass for being mentally ill, which I think we should continue to do. I think we should, like, when some people, absolutely, I know. Like I said, I agree with 50% of what you said. I think when people are acutely ill and when they're really struggling, I think that their capability to do certain things is severely impaired. I think we should give people a pass for that. But what I don't think we should do is let that be an excuse. So when someone says, you know, oh, I'm depressed, it's not my fault, my question to them is like, what's your plan to deal with the depression? Fine. In this moment, on this day, it's not your fault. What are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do the next week? What are you going to do the next month? Are you being responsible in tackling your depression? And what I tend to find is that, like, a lot of people, thankfully, most of the people that I've had the privilege of working with, and that's why I like working with them, that's why I have compassion for them, that's why I have latitude for them, because they put in the effort where it counts. They're not weak, right? They like try. And if, despite the fact that they're doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, sometimes the nature of the brain is such that they flip into these mood episodes, these manic episodes, things like that. So I think that sometimes people do use mental illness as an excuse. It's happening more and more and more, unfortunately. And I think that now what's happening that's even more dangerous is, like, if you try to hold someone accountable once they play the mental illness card, oh yeah, I had an affair, I'm sorry, I was manic, or I was hypomanic, or I was depressed and I needed this and it's not my fault. I think that, like, people should still be held accountable for their actions.
Right. Or like groping a woman because you have anxiety.
Sure. Yeah. Right. So I think that an illness is something that we should give some latitude for. I think these people deserve compassion. I think they deserve help. And someone should be held appropriately responsible for their actions.
There's more coping mechanisms than ever. The biggest one that I've noticed recently, and I don't know if you have patience to do this, but I like that you pointed out that people search to cope rather than to improve. The biggest one that didn't exist a couple years ago was ChatGPT. And I would say, I think 50 to 70% of women my age, girls in Gen Z, especially in New York City, liberal cities, when they have problems in their life or in their relationship, they go to ChatGPT because ChatGPT will validate them immediately. They'll phrase the question in a way to where they're never responsible for what's wrong. And they'll say to ChatGPT, this happened, it's this person's fault. And then ChatGPT will give them a list of reasons to cope. And now that they can go to AI to validate their feelings of weakness, I think we're going down a dangerous path to where people can avoid bearing responsibility for their own actions even more, and through a computer instantly.
Yeah, so I think so I did a super cool stream with two of my colleagues, and we basically gave it like psychiatric scenarios. And like so like we like took scenarios from like standardized tests or cases or whatever. Like so like when we were studying psychiatry, you'll have like this case or history or whatever. And ChatGPT was really good at pointing out a lot of problems in people's thinking. I was quite shocked. And it was also really bad at pointing out particular things. Mm-hmm. I think the takeaway that I have here is the utility of ChatGPT depends on the prompt engineering. So if you ask ChatGPT, if you just, so ChatGPT is very validating. That's what it does better than everything else. And that's why people, I think, find it incredibly useful. Mm-hmm. I have found, though, that a lot of people do find it incredibly useful. And I think that this is another one of the things that I think I take issue with a lot of what you say. And let me know if this rubs you the wrong way. But I think you tend to be pretty like black or white in your thinking. So you'll say, I mean, you said a lot of women. And I think that ChatGPT, there's a really interesting, there's probably going to be studies about this now, about ChatGPT induced psychosis. So this is like a phenomenon that we're seeing where like, people will talk to ChatGPT and it keeps on reflecting back like whatever they say, and they're sort of really becoming delusional. Now this is where you got to be careful, right? So this is where I think you're a lot of the statements that you have, I would argue are missing some nuance, and I think you're missing stuff, I would say. Sure. Not that you're wrong, but just based on my experience, which is that the question is, if you have someone who is in prodromal psychosis, which means the early stages, the incubation period of psychosis, and you give them ChatGPT, I think there's a very good chance that these people are like on the path to psychosis, and it accelerates it as opposed to creates it. Uh-huh. We're not sure. That's why data is important. Which brings me to another point that I think is important to understand, which is that I think, you said you've never seen it. And I think that, like, generally speaking, when it comes to influencers, and especially polarizing influencers. Now, I don't know what your social life is like and things like that. I think there's going to be a huge selection bias with like who you encounter, right? And that's why I like data as opposed to anecdotes. So even one of the advantages of being a physician is when I work in the Massachusetts General Hospital emergency room, all kinds of random people are showing up, okay, right? So in my private practice, I have people who are like founders from MIT incubators coming in for whatever. I have degenerate gamers. I have a particular slice of the world that is coming to see me. But when I work in an emergency room, I'm seeing all kinds of people who have all kinds of experiences. And I think a lot of your perspectives on mental illness, Lynn, like the way that you sort of describe depression, I think that this is one point that I wanted to bring up. I think it would be very enlightening for you if you could take someone who is healthy now and talk to them and really listen about their experience of depression. So I think a lot of the statements that you make about depression, my interpretation of it is that your phenomenological experience of your struggles is like very different from theirs. So when you talk about the adaptive thinking and things like that, and like you used to be depressed, you used to be sad, you kind of brought yourself out of it, I kind of agree. Like, I'm not disagreeing. I think a lot of people who are depressed are in similar situations as yours. I don't think it's monolithic.
No,
I think there's different
I didn't say I was
versions.
depressed. I said I was introspective and
I know, sorry.
Introverted.
So you had whatever your mental state was, and you used a particular strategy to overcome that mental state, right? And the way that you talk about that mental state and the way that you describe people who have that mental state, I think there's a variety of people who claim they're depressed. Many of them may have something in the ballpark of what you had, probably also in the ballpark of what I had when I was in my low points. And I think there are some people who have a very, very different experience. Like the what it's like to be inside their head is way more like intractable. Like so very severe depression can cross over into things like psychosis and delusions. And so I think some people are just so depressed, and it's hard to like imagine. I don't think most human beings would understand what this feels like until you've sat with these people and you recognize this person isn't weak, this person isn't stupid, this person is trying to cope. But like when you cope in a particular way, your mind listens to you. So there are some people whose minds don't listen to them. So when you try the techniques that you're doing, they like it just doesn't work. It kind of bounces.
So they have no. So if their minds don't listen to them, then how are they alive? Like that's the only thing that we have complete control over. If we're certain of anything, if we're certain of anything, is that we can control our thoughts and our minds, and if we're not even
you can't control your thoughts.
Absolutely, you can.
No, you can't.
I just showed you an example. You said it like that makes me sad, and I said it is what it is. That was an example of controlling the state of mind and what you think. If you can't. You don't think that
my mistake. I was taking an issue with a more the absolutist. I was interpreting that as an absolute statement, which is a mistake of my interpretation. So, for example, there are modifications and attempts to control your mind. You can send signals to your mind, and the mind at times will be more responsive and at times will be less responsive, right? There's a spectrum. And ideally, the healthier you are, the more pliable your mind is. But there's plenty of evidence that shows that some people's minds are more intractable. Their patterns of their habitual forms of thinking are a lot more concrete and a lot less modifiable. So a really good example of this is like body dysmorphia, where if you take people with like really, really, really severe body dysmorphia, really severe eating disorders, their mind is like, it's like made of stone. Like you can try to modify it as much as you want, but like it just doesn't shift. Like, and you have to do all kinds of weird.
But it doesn't start that way. It doesn't. It goes. It's a path. It's a slow dissolution.
I think so. I think so. So I think that there's. I hope so. But there's some, like you kind of said, there's environment, and I think a big part of the environment is the way that you treat your mind. Yes, I think that it kind of evolves in that. I think it gets more concrete over time, and I think if you intervene with those people early in a different way, then hopefully it would not evolve in that way. But we also do know that there's like genetic predispositions for like rigidity of thinking. Mm-hmm. So I think you're quite cognitively flexible, which is something, like I've said a couple times, I really respect about you. But I think that your cognitive flexibility is part of the reason why your methodologies work really well, right? So you've been dealt a certain hand of cards in your brain.
You keep saying that you think you disagree with 50% of what I say. I don't know if you necessarily disagree. I just think that you don't see the nuance of what I'm saying because I'm saying very blanket statements, and I do generalize a lot when I speak, and
okay,
I speak which is, I don't know if that's disagreement. It's just maybe it's a tonal difference, but
so I think that I would completely agree that as we add more and more nuance to the conversation, I think we get closer and closer together.
Absolutely.
A couple of other points. So just about the serotonin deficiency hypothesis. So I think just to clarify, psychotherapists may not be in favor of that hypothesis. It's usually psychiatrists that are. So psychotherapists, if anything, if there's a group of people on the planet who doesn't believe in the serotonin hypothesis, there's a really good chance that there's a psychotherapist, because they're like, some of them are trained in like Jungian analysis and Freudian analysis, and they think all kinds of different things. They don't think it can be, I mean, I'm lumping them all together, but many of them don't believe in that, or don't attribute that much to it. Now, I think that there very well may be a serotonin imbalance in the brain when it comes to something like a mood disorder. But I also think, I don't know if this makes sense, that if you do cognitive things like what you're doing, I think that will alter, must be damn near 100% correct. If you do the things that you're doing, that will alter the serotonin transmission in your brain. I feel incredibly confident in that statement. So I think there's what happened with the whole serotonin thing. That was something, and you're kind of right about this. I think what really happened there is we were looking for a way to destigmatize mental illness. So we were looking for a way, because everyone used to blame themselves for mental illness. They thought that things like mood disorders or stuff like that were weakness. And so we as a medical community, once we figured out, oh, there's a mechanism here, there's treatments here, we wanted people to stop stigmatizing it as weakness. So we offered this explanation of there's a chemical imbalance in your brain. And when we say there's a chemical imbalance in your brain, it's sort of like, it's not your fault, which is sort of what we were trying to do, right? Because we didn't want to blame themselves because something is going on that's really not your fault. But then what happened is we made a big mistake, which is that we told people it's not your fault, and then everyone started really internalizing, it's not my fault, so not my fault, whatever.
So the pendulum is swinging back the other way.
Yeah, so I would, I would say that most people, like, I remember I was in an interview at UCLA for my psychiatry residency. The person that I was interviewing, I mentioned the serotonin deficiency, and he was like, hold on a second. Why do you think that people with depression are deficient in serotonin? And I was like, well, isn't that what we think? And he's like, actually, there's very little evidence for it. It was a wonderful interview. He's a wonderful person. So I think that generally speaking, the more knowledgeable you are, I think we sort of know that that's like just a piece of the puzzle. It's not that it's right or wrong. It's that it's like woefully incomplete to describe a complex human being. But I think it's something that we did sort of like parrot the party line. Now, I'm also not quite on your level, and maybe there's a lot of nuance there, that there's a lot of like, money to be made, and there absolutely is, and pharma does shady things. Very possible that when pharma was talking about fluoxetine and whatever, they were kind of pushing this and saying that this will fix it. I think aftermarket studies on SSRIs have shown that it's not nearly as effective as what we thought it was. In my clinical experience, SSRIs are incredibly helpful and arguably life-changing for about a third of people who get diagnosed with depression. A third of people, it doesn't really help at all, or is even harmful. And a third of people is kind of like, we're not quite sure, maybe it has a mild to a moderate effect.
What about fatherhood? How much serotonin do you get?
What about fatherhood?
How much serotonin does that increase?
If you do it right, a ton. So serotonin, this is kind of my take. So I've sort of noticed there's an inverse relationship between serotonin and dopamine. So the more dopaminergic activities that you do, the more your serotonin will decrease. It doesn't actually happen that way. So I'm sort of talking about it in a functional model style way. So no one is measuring, intracellular serotonin concentration or synaptic serotonin concentration when I say these things. Mm-hmm. But what I sort of observe is when you do a lot of stuff that gives you dopamine, whether that's play video games, watch pornography, do drugs,
it
whatever.
Sacrifices serotonin. So short-term gratification versus long-term gratification.
Yeah, so short-term gratification is the more dopamine you have, then over time, you're not going to feel good about your life. So serotonin gives you a sense of peace and contentment, also an oversimplification. Dopamine gives you a sense of pleasure. Like, those are two different qualitative things. And the more dopaminergic you are, generally speaking, the less serotonin you'll have. Whereas if you look at like what gives people serotonin, it's like if you work hard over the course of a day, you feel good about it at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that you had fun. It's not fun. it's feeling content. You're like, oh man, like when you hit the sack and you're tired because you fucking grinded a lot and you have work that you can be proud of. When you have autonomy and the ability to self-direct, when you do things that are meaningful to you, you get serotonin. Now, there's complications there because, you know, when you're a father, frequently you're not sleeping very much, like especially in the early years. And so if you're not sleeping well, you know, your serotonin levels may be altered or things like that. But I think generally speaking, I would say that if you do it in a healthy way, and if you're lucky enough to have a kid who's like relatively like easy to handle, and not even easy to handle, is just not really hard to handle, then I think fatherhood has profound positive effects on your serotonin and your sense of contentment and peace in life. But if you're not careful and you just sort of go through the motions of fatherhood and sacrifice little chunks of yourself to being a parent over an extended period of time, you may wind up in a midlife crisis, going through a divorce, dating someone 15 years younger, getting a hair transplant, getting a lease on a fancy sports car.
At a Coldplay concert. That's why I had this tweet blow up 2 days ago. I said, I want to read it. I want to see it because I think it was worded really well. And
nice.
It does relate to what you do and content creators. So I tweeted, I said, PewDiePie ripped a hard R, then escaped this gay world to start a family. A decade later, all of his peers stare soullessly into the camera to make AdSense from Drama Slop to fund their Ozempic addiction and legal battles with former friends. Shout out to PewDiePie. And this blew up, and I think obviously I'm joking around like he ripped a hard R. That's not like something commendable, but it's an example of saying something you're not supposed to say, going against the grain. And then he left. He moved to Japan, started a family, and it seems like he's living a much more fulfilling life away from the internet. While all of his peers, they are on SSRIs, they're on Ozempic, they're getting the hair transplant, and they're still turning it on. Hey, you two, what's up? Today, I'm going to sue somebody who used to be my best friend and spend 3 hours reading Reddit comments and regurgitating Drama Slop for parasocials who are also in the same predicament. And yes, they have money, but they're also still in this world and they don't have an escape route. And I commend someone like PewDiePie, like his life trajectory is like, that sounds so nice to be able to have an exit route, because people who don't, you know, rip a hard R or get banned the way I do, they're just kind of trapped. And I think a good example of somebody like that is someone like iDubbbz, for example, who used to be, you know, an edgy YouTuber who would go against the grain and was saying things and, you know, speaking to the youth in a way that was outside. Like, people came to content creators to get non-traditional forms of entertainment and media. And then he just became the machine. He became mainstream news, and now he just completely did a 180. He's clearly like very upset with his life. He's probably on antidepressants. And in a way, to go for full circle with this, the blessing in all this is that the fact that I'm banned is that I have an exit strategy that other people don't have. If they're still in this world forever, then they have to play the PR route. And in a way, I like being the canceled guy because I don't have to jump through the same hula hoops that the other creators do. Being an outsider, I can be truthful. I can be honest. I don't have to play the public relations game and not say this and I'd not be deemed as this phobic or that phobic or a conspiracy theorist. Or I can be myself and express myself in a more authentic way. And eventually, when I do want to get the serotonin from having a family and from exiting, it's going to be much easier. And it's going to be an easier out. Because I don't want to be like, I see those older YouTubers in their 30s and 40s who are still turning on the camera to do absolute slop content, and I think that's one of the worst existences possible. Not just because they're clearly unhappy, but they're not making anybody better than themselves. Their whole audience is full of depressed people who are too invested in the lives of people that they're never going to meet or should be investing into at all. Like, these are just shit people overall. So I do think that is a blessing, and also partly saying it is what it is. Maybe that these challenges that I face I can be grateful for, because it's giving me obstacles that other people haven't faced and an exit strategy, so that eventually, you know, I can have that family and escape this gay world.
Okay. I understand what you said. what are you looking for from me in terms of response? And how
But it goes back to when you're like, you said that makes me sad, and it's like maybe, like obviously, you could see that,
Okay.
that there's a point of reflection there and stuff like this. But my point. I say that to say like maybe these challenges are a blessing as well. I think, like in Islam we say alhamdulillah for everything, the good and the bad, because there's always there's positives and the negatives, and maybe the negatives aren't really negatives, but they are positives, and I'm glad to. I'm saying it to say like I'm glad to not be those people that believe everything that we're told to believe, because they get trapped in this cycle of long-term negativity, and they just. I hate seeing that person turn on the camera and just do this soulless Ozempic stare, you know. And although they have the platforms that I don't have, I think they have less of their own soul.
Why do you think your mind goes to analyze these people in this way?
Because I see them as someone who started on the same path that I was on. Maybe they started YouTube a little earlier than me, around the same time, and it's an easy comparison to make. Obviously, comparison is the thief of joy, but I see that as like, this is the route that I could have taken, and am I happier with the route that I'm in, or do I want what they have? And I look what they have, and I don't want it. I'm very happy where I am. So
since you don't want it and you're very happy with where you are, what would happen if you weren't happy with where you are?
I would reevaluate. And I see that in a lot of them. I think that they're extremely unhappy, but because of the coping mechanisms that have been provided to us by Big Pharma and ChatGPT, they don't reevaluate, they don't progress, and they just cope more.
So, SNEAKO, one thing you've got to be careful about is devaluing things that you lost. So one very, very interesting mechanism of the mind, right? So maybe this is something you can empathize with. So, you know, when my friends and I liked a girl, we would sometimes get up the balls to ask her out. And then if she said no, right, we're butthurt. And then
that
we go
fat
back to our
lesbian,
homies.
she's fat and stupid
There
anyway.
you
Fuck
go.
that bitch.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
exactly,
coping.
right?
That's also cope.
So, and like, I think that there's a parallel between that and what you're doing, with a couple of really important differences. But I think that, like, so what I find interesting is the direction that you go. Like, why do you choose to compare yourself to these people? And you say this thing is negative. So there's a lot of good adaptation in there. I think you're correct that a lot of these people feel trapped. A lot of them feel unhappy. But I think you've got to be super careful, because what you're basically like, I don't know, this is so weird, right? So for me, what I pay attention to is what people say that is completely unprompted. I didn't ask you about this. And not that I'm happy you shared it. I really am. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. But I think it's like, you made this tweet. This is what your mind generated, right? Your mind is looking at these comparisons. Your mind, and I think this is what's kind of scary and good and healthy. And I think it's wonderful that we're talking about this, because like, here you are comparing yourself to all of the YouTubers who didn't get banned, who have the luxury of being soulless Ozempic bots and still having tons of content creators and being able to stream on YouTube and being able to stream on Twitch, all the things that you've been denied. And it can be really hard. So they have something you don't have. And so you've got to be careful when you devalue them.
Right, but I'm not completely
No, hold
devaluing
on.
it. Okay, but please,
I
1 second. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. No, go ahead.
I'm seeing the nuance.
So,
But I'm taking a page out of your book. In a way, I'm seeing the nuance of it. Yes, I want those platforms, but also there's a blessing in disguise. I'm not obviously, it would be better. I would prefer having it, but in a way, maybe this was a trap that I was able to overstep. This trap was prevented for me.
I think that there's a lot of.
It could be both.
It absolutely can be both. So here's the hard question. Do you want a hard question?
Yes.
Are you jealous of them?
No.
if you were jealous of them, would you let yourself be jealous of them?
No.
Could you admit to yourself or the rest of the world if you were jealous of them?
No.
As in, you wouldn't let yourself.
I wouldn't let myself show jealousy, no.
Right? So, like, you wouldn't even let yourself feel it internally.
No, I could feel it internally, but I wouldn't express that publicly.
Okay. Because I think what I get from you is resentment. And I don't think you're wrong, right? So this is what's so sneaky about the mind when it's like well developed, is that it's not going to tell you false things. It's just going to tell you incomplete things. So are a lot of people trapped in content creation that they hate? Absolutely. I have worked with a ton of them. So here are a couple of things that I think are happening, thankfully. So content creation just blew up and no one knew how to do it right. People are learning very, very, very quickly how to do it right, how to do it in a healthy way. So you have a lot of YouTubers who are soulless, on SSRIs, Ozempic, whatever. But then you have a ton of YouTubers who are not those things, who are not suing their best friends. And I mean, that's a weird example. I've not really heard of that very much, but like you make it sound like it's a common thing. Does that happen a lot?
Yeah, it's becoming increasingly common now for the main core of OG YouTubers.
But like, I mean, like I spend a lot of time, you know, working with YouTubers, collabing with YouTubers, whatever. And like a lot of them are like learning how to live their best lives. Like a buddy of mine, you know, is a YouTuber, grew up in a particular country, is married, has a kid. He's a digital nomad. His wife and his kid just moved to a random ass country that they want to live. I mean, he makes plenty of money, but like, you know, has an incredibly nice standard of living, is saving a ton of money. And then I'm sure he'll move when he feels like it. Right. So like what's like PewDiePie maybe was one of the early ones, but I would say a ton of YouTubers are learning how to do that. They're learning how to do it in a healthy way. The OG YouTubers and especially the OG Twitch streamers, all of us are like a little bit degenerate. But what's starting to happen is there's a ton of professionalism coming into content creation. You know, VidCon got acquired by the people who own Cannes, the film festival. So a lot of traditional media is coming in, a lot of like structure is coming in, a lot of professionalism is coming in. There's, you know, we get sometimes approached about, you know, doing people approach us, right? Like people like YouTube and Meta. So we built something for Meta for their content creators so that they could be like, get some basic understanding of like mental health and whatever. So I think that like this is true that there's a lot of degenerate YouTubers or Twitch streamers or whatever who are struggling and have the soulless Ozempic stare or whatever. But then there's actually like I would say that the tide is shifting pretty rapidly. And the thing is, if we're talking about incredibly successful YouTubers, I think that in order to cut it for this long and not fall apart, you have to learn how to be resilient. That's what I'm seeing more and more. Is that you have to learn some kind of work-life balance in order to make it work and continue to produce high-quality content. But I've worked with plenty who are struggling and plenty who are not. And the most gratifying thing is that many of the people that I work with who are struggling, after some degree of work, they don't struggle anymore. Like they learn and they adapt and they grow. And I think it's really challenging because a lot of these people start when they're very young. So one of the things that I'm really grateful for and really like honestly lucky is that I was like a relatively formed human being before I ever started streaming on Twitch. I started streaming on Twitch when I was 36. And like at that point I was faculty at Harvard Medical School and married and had 2 kids. Right? So like I had my difficult years and I was confident in who I was and had plenty of like ego strength and things like that in a good way. Whereas it's really like not dangerous or sad, but it's like it's kind of scary that a lot of these people start, yourself included, right? So you say you're 26 and you started on YouTube when you were 13. When you're 13.
I mean, technically I started when I was 11, right? But I started my channel, the channel I used for years. When I was 14, I would say 14, I really started taking it seriously.
So the way that you've developed
before I was in before I hit puberty. Like my early voices, my balls didn't drop.
Absolutely, right? So your developmental years were shaped to a certain degree by content creation.
Absolutely.
And what we know from a lot of child celebrities is when you're in the public spotlight, the human brain is not designed to be famous when you're 14. So, and when you're famous at 14, there are certain psychological impacts, which once again, I don't think are like weakness or anything like that. Like this just shapes you, like your circumstances shape you. Yep. And it's really sad to see, like, sometimes I'll see these like clips and stuff on Reddit of like some of these child stars that are like in puberty and stuff. And there's a lot of really successful musicians who started out like when they were teenagers. And boy, did they get like sexualized and judged in a way that like is just really, really scary. Yep. Like, and these people struggle so much. And I don't want to I see all kinds of problems that, when I look at a celebrity and they're doing particular things or saying certain things, I feel like I have some insight. I'm pretty sure my colleagues have similar insights. I've talked about it with some people, but like, we can see how, and it's not this person's fault that they're narcissistic. They just grew up in the spotlight, and that's what the spotlight does to you. And that's why so many celebrities and musicians are screwed up. Because they're just like, the human mind is, our brain evolved to exist in communities of like 300 people, being judged by millions of people. And here's the really damning thing. So if the brain doesn't think in terms of percentages. So if 1 million people like you and 100 people absolutely loathe you, the hurt from the 100 people is not outweighed naturally by the 999,000 people that like.
Very good point.
And there's a really, I'm sure you understand this because it's crazy. You talk to anyone who live streams, if you read your chat, you're not reading every message, but if there's a dangerous message, your brain will flag it immediately. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Right? Right? So it's just scrolling by faster than you can read, but they say the one thing you're worried about, and your brain is like, I see. Right? So our brain has this kind of danger detecting filter built in, which means that if 100 people hate you, all it really takes is like one person to stalk you, troll you, whatever, and like one person can screw up your life. And the really damaging thing about being a content creator is if you get big, you will absolutely attract the minimum number of people to screw up your life. Mm-hmm. I mean, you asked me about fatherhood. I ended up here because you mentioned the PewDiePie thing. But I think you've got to be...
A more specific question is, Dr. K, do you think I'm coping?
You know the answer.
I don't think I'm coping.
Okay. I think there's some coping.
Yeah.
I think it's adaptive coping.
Okay, but is it more coping than what is it borderline unhealthy or more than the average person or anything?
I think it's incredibly healthy. I think that being able to look at your negative circumstances and start to see this as part of your path in life that God put you on, and that there are some advantages that you have that other people don't have, I think is very healthy. To look at your situation and instead of being butthurt and depressed about it, saying like, okay, I've got some advantages that other people don't have, even though my life is hard, and I'm going to play to my strengths because now I have been banned from most of the major platforms out there. Like, I think that's the right strategy.
That's what I do. That's what I just explained.
I know.
So how is that cope? If that's dealing with
That's cope. That's coping.
Okay, so
Sorry.
But coping has a negative connotation.
My mistake. Let me explain.
Okay.
So I think that there is you're doing both. So you're coping, right? So I think that you're devaluing. You're making your mind is very sensitive and is devaluing of many people that I think that you are a little bit frustrated with. A little bit. You're more than a little bit. You're very frustrated. There's some negative valence of emotion towards those people.
Fair.
I think jealousy is the most common thing, but I don't think you experience it as jealousy. I think it's more like you're not like jealous of those people. You don't want their fucking lives. But I think there's a part of you that grates on the inside because they get they're allowed to do this crap and you're not. I think there's more resentment than jealousy. And I think you have the right kind of adaptation for moving forward. So I think there's that cope, and there's some copium energy in that tweet. Okay? But I think that, remember, coping is only unhealthy if you don't do the second part. I think you're doing the second part, which is like, okay,
so
now
that's a
that I'm
better
in this
question.
situation, how do I make the most of it? So I think there's adaptive coping here.
Okay.
But I think there's coping. And I think if you're really honest with yourself, when maybe you are and maybe you're not in public or whatever, I think you feel like you've gotten a raw deal.
But also,
And some of these
I do
fuckers-
think that, but I'm also
Some of these
appreciative.
fuckers,
Go ahead.
some of these fuckers who are making they're doing a lot of stupid stuff, but they're not making mistakes nearly, they're making way stupider mistakes than you are. They're making way bigger mistakes in some dimension than you are, and they still get to do this stuff, and you don't. I think that's somewhere within you.
Fair. But again, I'll reiterate, I'm also appreciative of this position because it allows me to travel down a road that other people haven't. And
Absolutely.
It opens new doors, and it's mentally stimulating. And one of the biggest fears I have, obviously after God, is boredom. I don't want a life where I appreciate the obstacles because it makes life interesting and worth living. And I never wanted to have a mediocre, redundant, repetitive life. So I appreciate it. And I asked that question because cope has a negative connotation. I think the way I was asking it was, I think because people use ChatGPT to cope with, they want to live with their negativity in a way where other people can adjust to it. But I think we've differentiated the difference between healthy coping or adaptive coping and just bullshitting yourself and being delusional. You think that my coping is leading, well, I think that the adaptive coping is helping me progress and become better. Many people can cope and just become delusional.
Absolutely. So I think you have a lot of adaptive coping, right? So I think you've rolled with the punches, and you're leaning into things. I think your situation is, I think you're quite restricted. I think your options are limited, and you're fighting an uphill battle as a content creator. And I think that's challenging.
Yeah.
And I think you're able to not get, how can I say this? And I think this is what you mean by coping, but so I think you've been hurt, but you're far from defeated. I think you're actually discovering a new kind of strength, which will move you hopefully forward in the right direction. And I think you've just got to be careful about, because I think what's going to happen is, and this could be happening, right? So when you do, not you, but when people do this kind of coping, they start to, there's like some amount of weird psychological things that can happen, like projection. So one thing that can happen is the weakness that you don't allow yourself to feel, you start to loathe when you see it in other people. So like this kind of stuff, and this is why I think that overall, like, integrating who you are completely is the healthy thing to do. I think integration is the goal. Don't sever a part of yourself, because if you, that part of yourself will live in your subconscious and will shape what comes out of your mind without your knowledge. So for example, you made this tweet. I think there's a lot that's true in this tweet, but why did you choose these particular people and these particular aspects of them as opposed to the million combinations of things that you could take issue with? Right? So some part of your brain is selecting this. Now, how does the brain decide whether you're talking about fat people or men or women or this ethnicity or that ethnicity? And this is something that you can see clear as day. Right, and there's really interesting. I mean, like, so there's another psychological defense mechanism called reaction formation, which is when there's a part of ourselves that we don't like, that we know is a part of us, we learn to hate that outside of us because that's way easier than hating that inside of us. Mm-hmm. So the classic example of a reaction formation is the homophobic homosexual. So like, I've got gay thoughts, that's really hard for me to manage. And if I can hate gay people outside of me, then I'm certainly not gay.
That's why I have this argument with my community all the time, because I say I love everyone, and they're saying, no, we hate gay and trans people. I'm like, are you gay? Like, why would you invest that much emotional, attachment to people that don't care about you or you don't care about? I say love these people and learn that they're gonna exist, and like, I fucking hate them. I'm like, what does that do? It doesn't do anything. It's so stupid to hate something that you can't control, or why, as men, you should not invest emotional energy into something that does not have a change, or there's no solution to it.
SNEAKO, defender of the LGBTQ community, was not on my 2025 bingo card.
That's gonna be. I mean, that's what I'm. I don't think that it's worth. There's no point. There's no point in hating them. And so many people in my community, I've been arguing with them for years about this. They're like, we hate them. I'm like, are you gay, bruv?
I gotta say, SNEAKO, I think you gotta let yourself be better publicly. Like, I think you have a lot of good stuff to offer, and I know you're a contrarian. I know you're spicy. I'm not saying give that up. I think it's beautiful. I love it. But also, like, you don't need to, and I know this is going to sound kind of condescending or whatever, but like, I know you're concerned about, I was about to say afraid, because that's really what I think you are. Ooh. Like, you're afraid to be, there's this different kind of courage, which is like being more open, being more honest, like things like that. And I think fear is not, you carry such a negative connotation, which is why I don't want to use the word. I think you'd agree with the word wary, right? You're wary, you're careful. And a piece of wary or careful is an acknowledgement that bad things could happen, and that sort of roots back in fear in some way. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying you're a scaredy cat or a pussy or anything like that. That's where these associations become really important. But I think people misjudge you drastically.
Well, I mean, but here we go, Dr. K, this is part of the resentment and frustration, is that because I'm banned everywhere, the narrative about me is shaped in a way that I can't control. So when people... All the time, I have liberals come up to me, or Zionists, and they say, "You hate everyone. You hate this." I'm like, "What did I say?" They don't know, but they believe it, but they don't have any reasons why, because they see more negative things come from me from people that are dictating the narrative. So I don't have a fair place in the social media world to explain my point of view or to present myself in the way that can be presented when it's dominated by people that hate me and want to make me look bad. The narrative around me is shaped, like, even earlier we started off this conversation, like, you don't know what I've been up to for the past couple of years, but you know that my reputation is not the best, and I'm controversial. I'm a contrarian, and that, like, you were surprised to hear that I don't hate gay people, because people.
I'm not surprised.
Fair, but you know about me from people that speak about me rather than from me. And that's because of my position in this space, and that's the frustrating part. That's part of the thing. Like, man, I've been saying this stuff for years, but people don't choose to listen. They choose to listen to what's negative, and that does build resentment. And not that resentment does anything, but that's an honest. That's just honest.
So yeah, so people may read cope into those statements. But I think out of everything that you've said, this is the thing that I have the least disagreement or least nuance. I think we both exist in a world where it's a race to the bottom, where what gets views is not the nuanced view. Like, so I was stunned. I saw a post recently on our subreddit about my view about a particular thing. Okay. And I was shocked, because I don't believe that at all. Right. And I think we just live in a world where, like, people make judgments based on slices of who we are. And we really live in a world as content creators where nuance is not what spreads. Right. So there's a great quote from Terry Pratchett, where he's like a fiction writer, but he says, a lie can make its way around the world before the truth gets its shoes tied. And so I think that we absolutely do live in a world, and I think this is why you've become so careful, right? You've had to become careful, because whatever you say is going to get clipped and shipped. Yeah. And the thing, though, is I'm going to tell you one observation that I made. So you've got an interesting opportunity. So people love to tear me down they're going to love to build you up. So what the internet responds to more than anything else is a delta. So the moment that you're a bad person and you continue doing bad things, everyone's going to get bored of you. The moment that I do anything even slightly bad, like the more good that I do, the more people are going to enjoy tearing me down. Right. So I think like good examples of this is if you look at streamers who are like have very good reputations.
Oh yeah.
People are going to love saying, oh, this person is an asshole. This person actually secretly does this,
Great
this
point.
kind of stuff.
Kai Cenat is getting the like, do you see the hate train on Kai Cenat?
No.
Oh, it is brutal. No. Like they just do, it's so fun to hate on Kai Cenat because he has a perfect brand image for the most part. Like as it comes to content creators, he's very well known. He just got a Fortnite skin. And then everyone's like, you didn't donate here. You didn't do this. You're homophobic. Like they want to, because he's on such a positive, internet loves being able to change the narrative about that. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So the internet
Mr.
also
Beast,
loves the
Mr. Beast
redemption
is a great
arc.
one. Yeah. Do they?
Yes.
Can you give me an example?
I mean, I'm not, let me think. What's a redemption arc?
Speed, maybe?
Speed, maybe. I mean, I just don't follow too many streamers, but like I'm pretty sure that. Let me just think about. There have to be like art. I'm just not following like pop culture, and I wonder actually like. So I'm glad you asked me for an example because now I'm questioning whether this is actually true. Right. So if I can't think of a single person. So I mean, I think generally speaking, so like maybe some musicians and stuff, right? So who like used to use a lot of drugs, used to party a lot, and then when they when they kind of get like decent later on in life, they can kind of become a redemption arc like Snoop Dogg, arguably like Martha Stewart, like. I think those are good examples. Like, so Snoop Dogg, like, I don't think a lot of people now he sells like candles or whatever. Right. And I'm not trying to disrespect him or anything like that. I also try not to talk about people. I try to talk to people. So I don't like to mention people, but I think Snoop Dogg is a really good example. I don't think most people know who Snoop Dogg really was like in the 80s and 90s. Now he's this like fluffy,
he was
lovable...
a murderer. he beat a murder charge. And, didn't he get convicted? I think he literally is a convicted murderer.
I'm not going to comment any. You asked for an example. That's one that I would offer.
Okay, that's fair.
Right. So like, and I'm not commenting whether he's a good person or whether it was fair or whether he's good now. I'm not making any kind of value judgment. But you want an example? I think that's like a good one. Yeah, and I think there are other like musicians and stuff like who sort of fall into that. And then I think there must be like streamers who kind of like shape up, right? They used to be kind of degenerate, but then they kind of go mainstream, and there's something of a redemption arc there. But it's a good point, and I think people love tearing people down more than a redemption arc. But I think from an archetypal standpoint and a tropal standpoint, we love redemption arcs. Because I think human beings see it and they think like, if you can do it, then maybe I can do it. So they love to see the triumph of the human spirit and good to win in the end. I think that's why it's in all the movies. But it is scary
I guess
that
your fellow Indian Neon is on a redemption arc. You know, he was saying people love to hate him a couple years back, and now he's doing a lot of positive things, and he's on a very good redemption arc right now. Yeah,
I can think of a couple of other streamers, but I'm not going to mention names. I think redemption arcs absolutely do happen. Mm-hmm. So we've been at this for a couple of hours. I'm debating whether I want to ask you about the crisis that you're going through or whether we should wrap up around now. What do you think?
Up to you. Unfortunately, we said this last time, and then we didn't speak for a couple of years. So if you want to ask me something, or if you want to leave, I'll put the ball in your court.
That's a great point. So since we do this once every 2 years, which maybe will change, why don't you tell me a little bit about what's been going on with you recently?
It's my editor texted me Logan Paul. That's a good example of redemption. What's been going on is I've been working a lot, and I like talking to you because I realize when I say things, like so what I was gonna say, and then I'll tell you the thought that I had. I was gonna say I've been working really hard, and the person I've been working with, CZK, he's been working in the summer. He recently commented on my work ethic, and he's like, "It's insane how much you work." And then I immediately thought about my fans or the community. People love you. Like they insist that I'm lazy all the time. They just like do this, do that. It's very, they see the predicament that I'm in, being banned, and they're like, oh, they get really upset if I'm not live, for 6 hours every single day. There's a lot of things that I do. I make these videos, I edit a lot, I'm filming a lot, I'm traveling a lot, I collaborate a lot. It's a lot of work. And as I was saying that, I was like, wow, I clearly listen too much to what people say online, and there's no point in investing energy in that if it ends up frustrating me that people don't understand what I do or trying to communicate that to them. So it's been busy. It's nonstop, and I enjoy it. But I do crave a vacation. That's why I'm a little bit envious that you went to France and Switzerland. I would love to have 4 or 5 days off and barely look at my phone and unplug and just be somewhere where I can relax and not think about the stuff and not read anything online. But the pressures of maintaining, social media, whatever, and also my career position is like you pretty much have to be. You got to be dialed in. You got to be locked in, and it's that fear of, disintegrating and losing everything you built.
So I mentioned to you that I went through a crisis. You said same or something of the effect. Is that what this is? Is that what you were referring to?
It's not a crisis, but it's I would love to start a. Well, okay. Actually, you wanted to speak to Myron, right? I need to connect you as soon as I'll put you in a group chat, and I'm sure you could have a good conversation. But recently, he went very public that he's been what?
I've been wanting to go on his podcast for a long time.
I think that'd be great, and
I think it'd be great too. He's someone else that I think people misjudge quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. He's one of my best friends, and I got to see him in Miami a couple days ago.
I don't know if you like Aiden Ross, but I love talking to Aiden too.
Aiden's Aiden's another one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And speaking of dopamine, I remember like last year we were in Canada, and I saw him win $1 million gambling online, something I refused to do, to take the money from. And I saw him win $1 million, and then immediately he got depressed 30 seconds later. I'm like, what the fuck? You just won $1 million, and he's sitting there like, fuck. I'm like, what? It's like the dopamine wore off. He got high from winning $1 million, and then it wore off. He's like, oh, okay, I already have like 80 million. And then now he's just, coming down. And I'm like, this is evil. Look what how do you get sad after winning $1 million? It's an endless loop. But he's, I remember you guys spoke. I saw that stream. Myron, I would love to see you guys do that. And Myron went really public. He said he broke up with his girlfriend. He doesn't want to start a family with her, because he doesn't want to start a family with her. This is what he said online publicly. I'm not saying anything that he didn't say. He said that he's not ready. He's 35, and he has more work to do, and he's not. And I'm like, that made me self-reflect a lot, because I want a family, and I don't want that to restrict. I don't want that to be in a competition with what I do. And it made me think, like, when am I going to get out of this? Am I going to still be streaming at 35? Am I still going to be at this routine, at this work level, no breaks? Am I destined to do this forever, or can I start a family, or can I be able to combine the two of them? So, yeah, that's what I've been thinking about a lot. And it also did inspire that PewDiePie tweet.
You feel trapped?
A little bit, but I do. I love what I do. I love what I do.
I know. So I think like this is challenging, because like I use negative valence emotions, and I ask you if you feel that way. And I think that there's an association of like being trapped as weak or whatever. But like I don't get that. Like, right. So I don't know if this makes sense, but like, what I'm getting a sense of is that you feel incredibly like restricted. Like you can't afford to stop.
Pretty much, yeah.
right? So if you and this is what I'm kind of curious about. You said the phrase scary, fear of disintegrating. What does that mean?
Of losing everything, basically like letting them win. You know, they try to,
Letting who win?
the people that took away my platforms, that ruined my reputation, that, you know, say that preyed on my downfall. Those people, like by losing this, it's like that vindicates them. So it's like a nonstop battle.
So you winning means never taking a vacation and never having a family?
No, me winning.
That's a weird victory.
Me winning is finding an exit point like PewDiePie, where you leave on your own terms, and nobody can say that that you lost everything, or that nobody could tarnish your reputation of what you've done. So he left it on his own terms, and I respect that a lot. And
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe I'm fatigued, but I'm gonna be a little straight with you. So and you have to we got to reserve the right. If this doesn't end up right, I get a redo. Is that fair?
Sure. Here we go.
So like I'm hearing some things that I think make a lot of sense and are kind of like losing sight of the forest for the trees kind of thing. So first of all, if your goal is to have an impeachable reputation, that is a terrible goal. So you're dictating the way that you live your life based on the opinions of others. So if people want to say, like, who the fuck cares if they say that you pussed out or whatever? If you're out there living your life and you're happy and you're hanging out with your family and you're on the beach or you're writing a book or whatever it is that you do, you're holding workshops for whatever, right? Like, if you're living your life this is a very dangerous goal to have. A reputational goal is I would argue that it is not within your control.
That's not the complete goal. I think that's a secondary goal. Obviously, the goal is to do the right thing, and I'd say the ultimate goal is to bring people closer to God, entertain, do the right thing. That's the top of the pyramid, as we specified earlier. Secondary goals is, I do want, ever since they took everything and they smeared my reputation, the secondary goal is proving those people wrong and not letting them be correct in their assessment of me.
So that too, I mean, this sounds dangerous to me, like in a way that's going to hurt you, because now it's like your mission. So I don't think God is the primary goal, actually, because if God was the primary goal, you'd take 4 to 5 days off. Right? Like, so I think what's actually happening is that in one part, and this is exactly the shadow that I was talking about. When you start lopping off parts of yourself, this is what happens. Because you say something is the primary goal, but if God is really the primary goal, you can take 4 to 5 days off.
Yeah.
This is where there's some kind of weird fuel. And I don't know if you've noticed, but over the course of this conversation, you have expressed a theme of frustration with other people's impression of you. Right? That's the thing. And I don't think that that's like bad or anything. I'm not trying to say it's a weakness or anything like that. Like, people misjudge you, sort of, right? Because they judge, it's not that they misjudge you, it's that they incompletely judge you. They judge a slice of you. They form an opinion based on the first 6 words out of your mouth. They don't even pay attention to the other 25. And now here you are, fighting a reputational war against some phantom. How do you know when you win?
But it's bigger than just reputational, right? It's also an ideological war. It's a culture war. It's the war about the truth. And also there's conflicting ideas about even taking a break, because as I expressed earlier, one of my biggest fears on this earth, besides God, is a life of boredom and stagnation and repetition. And I know I'm the type of person, like, I idealize like, you know, escaping and having a family or even taking a vacation, but it's like I can visualize myself there and I see myself like getting bored in a day or two. I'm like, fuck, I want to go back to work. You know, it sounds nice, but it's not truly what I want.
Do you remember early in the conversation where I said this is adaptive, but it's going to be maladaptive when you're 40?
Yeah.
This is what I'm talking about. Right? So like here you are wanting something, and you've got to be really careful, man, because if you're not careful and you end up dating someone who is who you're supposed to date and some of this shit comes up, you're going to screw it up. Like you're going to get bored. Like I don't know if this makes sense. You're out of control in an in control way. You can't stop. You won't let yourself stop. And it's not like you're stopping forever. Like you won't even let yourself take a break because you're fear of disintegration. You don't want to let them win. Right? And there are these other things that are not congruent with your actions. And you want to part on your own terms. Fine. Like, great. Awesome. You know, I support basically most of what you're like. I think it's good, but do you see how this just doesn't plug in? There's an independent driver here, which is driving you. And even though you're not able, like you want to take a vacation, it sounds nice. There's a lot of stuff that you want that sounds nice, but the act of actually doing it doesn't feel good. Right? So this is so now if you're really careful, and I'm being a little bit rough with you here, okay? So like it's coming from a place of love. This is a level of lack of self-control. Where there's a level of self-control which is like, I'm not going to let my fear of boredom or my inability to be bored control my ability to take a vacation. Right? So you're still being like puppeted by a part of you. And I'm not trying to devalue any of your goals. I support your goals. Go ahead and establish your views. You know, like the people who thought that you were X, Y, or Z, it's not that you want to prove them wrong. You are not going to be that thing. And if they want to continue to misjudge you, that's on them. Mm-hmm. Right? But there's something here that feels to me like some of these energies, fundamentally you want these things, but you're not allowing yourself to have what you want. And if you just think about that for a second, what's stopping you? Clearly something inside you, because I don't know. I mean, maybe your chat is like, if you take a 4-day vacation, like we're never going to see you again. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think you may attract people, almost certainly will, who also flagellate themselves, right? Push themselves. Y'all make it an honorific to have such a great, I know you've got a great work ethic. Like I can tell, right? But like, there's almost this like zealousness of work ethic where you have to. And this is where I think some of those associations become important, because I think there's like some middle path. Like I think you can take 4 or 5 days off. No, and I think if you're bored, you don't have to commit to 4 or 5 days. If you're bored, and then you're like, I want to come back to work, so be it. Mm-hmm. Right? But as long as you have this specter of, I'm not going to let them win, like that, they're living rent-free in your head, bro.
Absolutely. And that's why I tweeted that about PewDiePie and you know, the people that live opposite to him, is because they have a similar mentality that I'm trying to escape from, you know, and that I'm working on and aware of, where they're still churning out the drama slop with that Ozempic stare because they don't acknowledge what's wrong or see that they should have an exit point. And I don't want to be that. Like that's exactly why I said that. And that's the crisis, is like, I really don't want to be that forever. That's a dangerous thing to be when you're 42. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so once again, I'm being a little bit rough with you. Okay. So like, but no, like here not, they not are really, with the really. SSRI. I
want you to make me cry or something. This is, come on.
So they are soulless, making drama slop, whatever, SSRIs, Ozempic stare, and like, so that's why they're stuck in this, right? What's your excuse? How are you different? right? They're being pushed by something within them. You're being pushed by something within you. You say you want these things. And I think that some of this will calm down, by the way. So hopefully you become like more secure, like from a, I don't know exactly what your financial situation is or anything like, I don't mean like psychologically secure. I mean like whatever, and I've talked, you know, I've worked with content creators who have been banned from platforms, and it's a tenuous existence, right? It's like tenuous. That's what I mean. Like, and so if things kind of calm down for you, and there's some more steady like income or whatever, I don't know exactly what your income is or anything like that. Some of this stuff can get better, but I think you got to be really careful about what's driving you. What is that thing? And it's not the logical thought. There's something that is producing a particular bucket of thoughts. It's also that
I believe that I have a God-given talent. I find myself, maybe you can call it narcissist. I think I'm very talented. And I think I'm gifted at what I do. And I think that I impact a lot of people, and I've seen the impact I've had on people well over a decade of the stuff that I've put out. And I know that it's almost like a responsibility that I find to do more and to impact more people and to help and to, you know, put that out there more. And I know that I'm not even close to done yet. And that's a main driver.
Yeah, so I can empathize, right? I would say that I am talented.
You are, absolutely.
That I affect a lot of people.
Absolutely.
I help a lot of people. And also, I don't think that I have to do it alone. I think that I was put on this earth by God to help people. But, like, I get to take vacations. And I have a ridiculous work ethic. I work 7 days a week, most weeks. I had my first vacation in 5 years. And so, like, I'm sort of with you there. But I think this is what I've sort of learned is, like, you've got to be careful because all of those things can be true. But there's a certain, you're like 100%. And all the things that you're saying, like, I don't think God is asking you to never take a break. You're 26 years old. You've got 40 to 50 years of content creation left in you. And what makes you think that, like, taking 4 days off won't improve the quality of your content? So one of the most shocking things that we discovered, so we have a career coaching program where I forget exactly what it is, in about 8 to 12 weeks, people's, like, channel growth increases by somewhere between 30 and 80%. I think the number is 80%, but that number sounds ridiculous. Let's just say we improve their channel growth by 50%. The key thing about our program is we do it without increasing the number of hours worked. So working more is not necessarily going to get you there. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think this is where, like, there's a lot of self-reflection about, you know, like, do you mind if I ask a couple questions about your personal life?
Absolutely.
Are you dating anyone right now?
No.
Okay. Are you interested in finding a committed relationship?
Absolutely, yeah.
What is making when do you want to do that?
Pretty soon, if not now. Like, I am looking for that. Yeah, that's something that I am investing time and energy into.
What's getting in the way?
Nothing really. It's just I think nothing's really getting in the way.
Okay, so you're, like, actively pursuing that, things are moving. Because, like, there's a part of me that I'm defaulting to this hypothesis that something about your work ethic is going to, like, there's a certain there's a certain zeal, right? There's, like you're, like, all in on this. Like, it's, like, work 7 days a week, no days off, you're editing, you're coming up with ideas, you're collabing and stuff like that. And I get you, dude. Like, next 6 months of my life are really, really busy. And then I'm working on a bunch of stuff. Like, you know, I really do think I get you. And I think you should do all that shit.
Yeah.
Like, but scaling back by 10% or 20%, I think that's only an issue if there's an end target with a finite timeline. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, there was financial goals that I wanna hit. I am doing very well. Alhamdulillah, that's stuff that I'm very blessed to be, but I'm not quite exactly where I want to be, so where I could comfortably be like, all right, ready to have like pop out 4 kids like that. You know, I'm not a very materialistic person, but I want to have complete comfort in that and not have to, because I grew up like there was a lot of financial stress, and I don't want any of that for my kids. So
yeah. So I mean, so then my next question is like, how much of this is actually a problem?
Is what a problem?
Because what you're so like this. So I'm getting kind of mixed signals here, which is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. So on the one hand, you're saying like, okay, I want these things, right? So like I kind of like the way that PewDiePie did it, that's kind of the path that I think jives with what I want. Do your stuff, take an exit, don't be like trapped in this life forever.
Yeah.
You know, take a break. Do you want to take a vacation?
Yes and no. Yes and no, because that's how I first started my streaming career. I would do 1 month off, 1 month on every single day, and then 1 month off completely, where I just would travel Europe and then not stream at all. And people always say, I miss when you streamed every day. It's like, that was never what I did. You know, when I was on YouTube streaming, which is, you know, short-lived, it was 1 month on, 1 month off. And I really liked that routine. But also, when I was there for a while, I'd just be sitting around, and then I'm in Europe, you know, not sure, what do you do? You end up drinking somewhere, or just wasting time, or just being a degenerate, because like, how do you fill up your time? I'm the type of person where like I don't like boredom, and degeneracy does quickly replace that. So work is also an escape from that familiar routine. So I mean, it sounds nice, but it's also, I love working. I love it. You know, I love this
Yeah.
life.
So what appeals to you about a vacation?
I guess just silence from constant social media. I think that is the big appeal. Being in a place without, you know, the familiarities of it. But even then, I went to Miami recently for a couple of days, had to take care of housekeeping stuff, and you know, I streamed maybe once in 3 days, and I came back, and I was so relieved to be back in New York City, because I love the chaos and the busyness and the, you know, the FOMO that I get if I'm not working. Like why I love New York so much is that there's an energy here that pulls you into work.
Can I think for a second?
Absolutely. How's this going?
Is there a problem here? Is this something you're unhappy with? Or are you okay with this?
No, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm venting, you know, but I'm okay. Also, again, why it goes full circle, like it's part of the reason I don't believe in therapy, because, yeah, my life is good. I really don't have too much to complain about. I'm venting.
What are you venting about?
You know, frustrations I have, but it's not
What
that
are you
big.
frustrated with? What are you frustrated with?
The stuff that I vocalize, like the being canceled, the reputation, and the feedback from the community. A lot of the frustrations do stem from social media, but also love social media.
Okay. I got you. Thank you so much for clarifying. Yeah, so I sort of see like you're kind of like stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Because on the one hand, you've been burned by social media. It's a relief to get away from social media. But you like the work, right? You don't need a break from the work. And if you take a break from the work, if you take a break from engaging your mind, and that's really what I see here, is like you're engaging your mind every day. You're thinking. You're talking to people, you're collabing, you're like, your ideas are being tested, your ideas are being clarified through when you say them out loud. You're thinking, right? You've got this mission, you don't exactly know how you're supposed to fulfill it. You notice you're having an impact. The world isn't fixed yet, so you've got to keep going, and each day you do it, you get better. That's got to be addictive. Right? Not in a bad way. It's like, okay, like we're doing it, right? So you got kind of KO'd a little bit, but you didn't get KO'd. You got knocked down, You're at a disadvantage, but you're going to come back. Right? And so like you got to kind of make up for lost time. So you're grinding. You're not going to make the same mistake again. You're not going to get fully canceled. You're going to find a way to come back. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
You want to break from the socials. That taxes you. You're willing to pay the price. It's worth it to pay the price. Paying the price, you're happy with where you are now, and you've got you're going uphill, but you're still fucking climbing. So if you take a break, on the one hand, you get a break from the negativity. On the other hand, if you take a break and you're not engaging yourself, then you're going to become a degenerate. You don't want to just be sitting there drinking, right? Do you want to explore Europe? Yes, but you're going to wind up sort of wasting your time, sort of being bored, so you might as well work. So like what I'm sort of getting from you is that this isn't ideal, but you'll take it any day of the week over the alternative. You just rather be working than be on vacation, because vacation is a break from social media. Sure, you get this thing, but you don't get these 8 other things.
Yeah, it goes back to your point earlier where you can get 1 million positive comments and 100 negative comments. And so it's like I get a break from the 100 negative comments, but I also get a break from 1 million positive comments. So yeah, I think that point you made up earlier is a perfect comparison.
So here's kind of where, like, after I kind of put it back to you like that, where are you now with this?
Right where we started.
Okay, good. So I think that's actually really good. So I don't think we're actually right where we're started. But
it's good to clarify these ideas and get a perspective on them, and hear them out. But yeah, no, this it is good. But I'm I think a lot. As much as I try not to be too introspective, the stuff that I've been tossing and turning with for years.
So so here's what I think you should do. So I think there's a couple of different points here. The first is that I think a lot of your desire to get away from social media isn't today. It's actually a dormant wound from the past. Right? So like when you say, I want to get away from social media, it's not the comments today that you need to get away from. It's the aggregate hurt of social media, which you're sort of moving away from. I think that's something you should consider. So, which also means that part of the, because you're sort of conflicted, but I think the reason you're conflicted is because on the one hand, like, you actually don't want a vacation. So the thing that you're running away from is not actually present in the here and now in a very potent way. The process of getting canceled hurts a lot. Now, right? So now I don't think it's social media today. I think there's a dormant wound which you're running away from in some way, not in a bad way, but you want relief from. That's a better way to put it. So I think if that wound gets resolved and you kind of come to terms with that, and you've done a really good job in some way, but I think you've also walled it off. Do you know what an abscess is? Have you ever heard this term?
Like a cancer?
Sort of. So an abscess is when we have like an infection or something, your body forms a wall around the infection. So it forms this like circle, and there's active infection on the inside, but it can't spread. So it no longer damages you, but it never gets healed. It's not the same as healing. So we're going to like wall off the contamination. We're not going to get rid of it. We're going to just wall it off. So sometimes when people go through things like what you've gone through, this is sort of what happens in their mind. They wall off a part of themselves, and then they want that to go away. But it's kind of weird, and then they wind up in these situations where you're like, you're really interested in this, but the thing that you are interested in doesn't solve what you're longing for. Does that kind of make sense? Like you want it, but it doesn't do what you want it to do. It's not going to do what you want it to do, but you want it anyway, which is like weird, because then why do you want it? So I think that this is something you should consider. Second thing is that I think you need to learn how to be bored.
Yeah,
so there's like, right? So I think that there's a level of like contemplation, there's a level of relaxation, and you say it's easy to fall into degenerate habits. And I think a big part of like growth is going to be learning new ways to do things. Now, I don't think you're ready to take a vacation anytime soon, and I don't think vacation is really the right thing. But I think that, you know, when your body tells you we need a break, like, give it that break and give yourself some time to, you know, be with yourself. I mean, maybe the kind of vacation you need is a little bit different. I'd say, like, grab a notebook, grab a pen, grab a laptop.
I do. I
and
write
go
every
to a
day.
cabin.
Yeah, which I do consider to be a vacation, like something like that. That's what I do visualize, is like being alone with my thoughts in a cabin. That is like what I'm talking about. Just being like on a beach somewhere, just like where I could write, which is work.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
which, and technically it's not really a break.
I mean, yes and no. So I think it is a break from social media, which is the break that you really crave, and it's not going to be boredom, right? And I say, like you're right, it's technically not a break, but I don't think you're ready for a break yet. Mm-hmm. Like, if you want to go without the laptop, go without the laptop. If you want to go hang out on a beach somewhere, go hang out on a beach somewhere. But if you're not ready for that, then go take a working vacation. You know, I mean, and that's something that, just because you don't have to be idle and be on vacation. So I think there's some amount of, like, you got to really think about how much you've been affected, and not just in the sense that it's like worn you down or you've lost or anything like that. Like, you've coped, you've bounced back, you're bounced back. Now it's just what's lingering within you that you're really, like, sensitive to. Mm-hmm. And you can go back and you know, listen to this conversation again. And I think the primary theme here is, like, the judgment of others, which is so tricky, because, like, you're striving to be independent, and it's got to be frustrating to be, like, thinking about other people so much, even when you've learned, because I can tell a part of you has grown past that. You really have. But it's like a part of you hasn't. Like, it's like 80%, 90% of you has grown past it, but 10% of it is like, I want to show these fuckers. And then I think on a given day, you know, if I ask you, like, okay, if I'm doing work that I'm aligned with, I'm going to try to help people. I'm going to work in service to God, whatever, like 90% of it. But there's some fucking 15-year-old kid who's looking at himself in the mirror, doesn't like what he sees. And what bothers him even more is, like, he's proud of himself. So what he sees when he looks in the mirror is something he's proud of, but everyone else doesn't see that. That's what really bothers you. Mm-hmm. And that's still there. Right? You've done the growth. People don't see it. And then you probably hate yourself a little bit for wanting them to see it.
You're good at what you do. You're good at what you do. No, you are. Gotta give you credit. You both conversations, you surprised me. Oh shit, this guy's kind of spot on. Yeah, because one of my first viral videos, I was 15, I was 16 when I made it. It's called "How People View You," and it was about this exactly. It was about living for people's validation and living in the perception of other people, and how that's becoming increasingly common with social media. And it was like a warning sign. People really loved how, you know, it was articulate and accurate in a way that people didn't describe. And even without social media, people have been doing that. But that is, that is, you know, one of the common themes about everything in my work.
Yeah, I think, and hopefully this isn't glazing too much. I think you have some serious prophet energy. Like, you really do. Like, I think you're thoughtful, you're charismatic. Like, you have some prophet energy kind of going on, and I'm not. I really see that, and I think you have something really important to offer. And I hope that you don't have to sacrifice your life, right? So I know your name. I mean, I don't know what your real name is, but you know, you're SNEAKO. And, like, there's a human underneath, and I just hope you're able to find some way that you fulfill whatever that prophet energy is going, right? It's some amount of teaching and some amount of speaking and some amount of spreading and disseminating, but there must be a clarity of idea. It must be disseminated in the right way. These tweets do go viral. You do have this charisma. You've got all those pieces. But hopefully the human doesn't have to be sacrificed in the process. enough for today, I think.
You're the GOAT, Dr. K.
All right, man.
Hey, I wish all success to you and to you and your
Likewise.
family. Great speaking to you again. I would love to do this again. Feel free to message me anytime if you want to catch up and talk. It was fun talking to you through the messages the past couple of days, and before then.
Cool, man.
Appreciate this a lot.
Thank you so much for talking.
Talking's good. That's what
right,
we
man.
do, huh? Have a good one.
Take care, buddy.
Bye. Dr. K, man. Dr. K! Fucking hell, that was good.